Chapter 349. The reason why Chu Tianxing had questioned the demon race was to clarify the situation. Was the heavenly sword sect colluding with the devil race, or had they been kept in the dark by the devil race and were being used? If the Tianjin sect had really fallen to the point of colluding with the demon race, the consequences would be unimaginable. No matter what, Chu Tianxing would find a way to eradicate the Tianjin sect for the sake of the billions of people in the Tianjin region. But now, it seemed that the Tianjin sect had no idea about this. Not only were Gao Yi and the elders kept in the dark, but even the people from the other sects did not notice anything strange. Chu Tianxing was indeed full of anger and killing intent, but thinking of this, he quickly calmed down. At this time, Yun Yao said to him through sound transmission, "Master, this is obviously a conspiracy of the demon race. The demon race set up this scheme to provoke the conflict between the Tianjin sect and our sect, so that the Tianjin sect and our sect will fight and kill each other. Master, this matter concerns the safety of the entire Tianjin region. You must treat it seriously. If our sect and the Tianjin sect fight, both sides will be injured, and the demon race will take advantage of this opportunity to invade. At that time, if the demon race breaks the seal of our sect, the people of the Tianjin region will be plunged into misery and suffering." Yun Yao's sound transmission could not only be heard by Chu Tianxing, but also by Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing also quickly said to Chu Tianxing through sound transmission, "Master, for the sake of the big picture, our sect must not fight with the Tianjin sect at this time. Otherwise, it will be exactly what the demon race wants, and they will be able to reap the benefits." Chu Tianxing's face was solemn for a moment, then he nodded and said through sound transmission, "Yes, you two have seen through it very clearly. Master also thinks the same." At this time, the Tianjin sect leader saw that he was silent, so he shouted in a stern voice, "Chu Tianxing, what do you have to say now?" Chu Tian looked at him coldly, and said in a solemn tone, "Gao Yi, regarding the matter of the demon race, this king will not argue with you today. In the future, this king will definitely give you an explanation. I won't hold you accountable for what happened last night for the time being, but you have to release Yan now." Hearing his words, Gao Yi and the other elders all thought that they had misheard, and their faces were filled with astonishment. A moment later, Gao Yu sneered and shouted, "Chu Tianxing, have you gone senile? Now is not the time for you to pursue the matter. You have to give me an explanation. If you don't give me a reasonable explanation, my Tianjin sect will suppress your Sky Pillar sect and seek justice for my disciple." Chu Tianxing had to consider the overall situation, so he had no choice but to suppress his anger and ask in a deep voice, "Gao Yi, what kind of explanation do you want?" The true goal of the Tianjin sect master was to use this matter as an excuse to openly and confidently declare war on the Sky Pillar sect. However, in front of the sect masters of the Thousand Autumns sect and the true martial sect, he couldn't speak his true thoughts. He coldly glanced at Ji Tianxing and immediately came up with an idea. "Chu Tianxing, a life for a life, and a debt must be repaid. This is a matter of course. Your disciple, Ji Tianxing, killed my disciple, Xueqi. I want him to pay with his life. Hand over Ji Tianxing. I want to use his blood and head as a sacrifice to Wenyu's soul in heaven." Chu Tianxing and the other Sky Pillar sect elders' expressions suddenly changed, and their eyes were filled with anger. "You want me to hand over Ji Tianxing? Impossible. Gao Yi, give up on that idea." Chu Tianxing's expression was cold as he angrily shouted. The Tianjin sect master had long expected that Chu Tianxing wouldn't agree, and this was exactly what he wanted. He angrily shouted, "Everyone can see that it's not the Tianjin sect that's being aggressive, but Chu Tianxing who is being rude and unreasonable, using his power to bully others. Chu Tianxing, since you're not willing to compromise, then we have nothing to talk about. Go back to the Sky Pillar sect and wait. My Tianjin sect's elite troops will slaughter their way to the Sky Pillar sect in a few days and demand justice." The negotiations between the Tianjin sect master and Chu Tianxing had broken down, and the two sects were like fire and water, about to officially go to war. At this time, Ji Tianxing suddenly stepped forward and stood in front of the Sky Pillar sect's people. He expressionlessly looked at the Tianjin sect master and said in a solemn tone, "Sect Master Gao, every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Since Xueqi died because of me, and you insist that I killed him, then I'll pay with my life and settle this grudge. In front of all the sect masters, I, Ji Tianxing, will take your palm. After this palm, if I die, I'll pay with my life for Xueqi. If I'm still alive, then we'll settle this grudge. This matter will end here, and the Tianjin sect won't continue to pester me. What do you think? Ji Tianqing's voice was sonorous and resonated throughout the entire mountain peak like a great bell. After hearing his words, the faces of the dozens of martial artists present changed dramatically, and they all cried out in alarm. Chu Tianxing, Yun Yao, and the others' faces changed dramatically, and they hurriedly tried to dissuade him. Tianxing, don't be reckless. Junior brother Tianxing, you absolutely can't do this. You'll die. Tianxing, Gao Yi is a Sky Origin stage expert. He can smash a mountain with his full strength. How can you block it? Absolutely not. Tianxing, you're the mainstay of our Sky Pillar sect. You're our future hope and a top genius. How can you use your life to pay for Xueqi? The Tianjin sect master and the others all had complicated expressions on their faces as they discussed this matter incessantly. Ji Tianxing is indeed young and impetuous. He doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Humph! This brat is so arrogant. He's digging his own grave. He's just a Tongxian stage martial artist. Even a mountain wouldn't be able to block Sect Master Gao's palm. Sect Master Gao, since Ji Tianxing wants to die, then you should fulfill his wish. Kill him to appease Xueqi's soul in heaven. The Tianjin sect master frowned as he pondered. His face was somewhat ferocious. His original intention was not as simple as killing Ji Tianxing. He wanted to destroy the entire Sky Pillar sect. However, Ji Tianxing had stepped forward bravely and proposed this method in front of everyone, immediately disrupting his plans. If he didn't accept it, then it would be clear that he would continue to pester them and use Xueqi's death as an excuse to attack the Sky Pillar sect. In this way, the Tianjin sect wouldn't be in the right and wouldn't be able to gather the other sects to besiege the Sky Pillar sect. However, if he accepted this method, he would at most be able to kill Ji Tianxing with a single palm to avenge Xueqi. After Ji Tianxing died, this matter would be settled. The Tianjin sect would have no reason to declare war on the Sky Pillar sect. For a moment, the Tianjin sect master was caught in a dilemma. It was difficult to choose. At this time, Chu Tiantian looked at Ji Tianxing with a solemn expression and said in a solemn tone, Tianxing, Master forbids you from making this decision on your own. Yan is Master's disciple. You are also Master's disciple. Master will never let anything happen to either of you. Ji Tianxing also said in a solemn tone, Master, this is the best way to resolve the grievances between the two sects and maintain the overall situation. Chapter 350. Chu Tiantian looked at Ji Tianxing with a solemn expression. His mood suddenly became very complicated. He felt gratified and happy, but he was also full of worry. He sighed silently in his heart. Sigh. Tianxing, oh Tianxing, you're only a 17-year-old boy. How can you be so outstanding? You're talented, righteous, calm, and wise. You're brave and resourceful. You're only 17 years old. Why do you have to shoulder such a heavy grudge and shoulder such a heavy responsibility at such a time of crisis? You've only been in the sect for less than half a year, but you have the courage and responsibility to stand shoulder to shoulder with Yun Yao. If something were to happen to you, how could Master not be heartbroken? Chu Tiantian had lived for more than 100 years. In his life, he had met many different kinds of people and seen many talented geniuses. However, there were only a dozen people who could catch his eye, and Ji Tianxing was one of them. He valued Ji Tianxing not only because of Ji Tianxing's outstanding talent, but also because of Ji Tianxing's heart. He saw through Ji Tianxing very clearly. Not only did he have outstanding talent, but his martial heart was also very firm, calm, and wise. Most importantly, in this merciless world of martial arts, most people were heartless, selfish, and regarded other people's lives as nothing more than grass. However, Ji Tianxing could still maintain his original heart. He was upright, kind, and righteous. He also had the chivalrous demeanor of helping the world. This was really rare and commendable. Chu Tiantian's mood became heavier and heavier. He felt even more ashamed of Ji Tianxing. The grudge between the Tianjin sect and the Sky Pillar sect, the overall situation of the ancient Star Realm and the Tianjin territory, these were things that he and the elders of the Sky Pillar sect should be worried about. In the end, he and the elders were helpless. Ji Tianxing had to step forward bravely and sacrifice himself to resolve the grudge. Thinking of this, Chu Tiantian secretly made up his mind. If Ji Tianqing could survive this calamity, he would definitely nurture Ji Tianqing into the next sect master of the Sky Pillar sect. If Ji Tianqing was killed by Gao Yi, he would bury Ji Tianqing with the highest ceremony and treat Ji Tianqing's family members well. Because this was what the Sky Pillar sect owed him. He would also make sure that the Tianjin sect would no longer have a foothold in the Star Ancient Realm. At the same time, a purple-robed elder escorted the heavily injured Yan to the crowd in the square. Yan saw Chu Tiansheng, Ji Tianqing, and the others. She learned that Ji Tianqing was going to be hit by the Tianjin sect master. He tried his best to wave his hand at Ji Tianqing. With a pale face and a weak voice, he shouted, "Senior Martial Brother Tianqing. No. I'm the Crown Prince of the Fire Tribe. The Tianjin sect doesn't dare to kill me. Don't worry about me. Just leave." Chu Tiansheng, Ji Tianqing, and the others' gazes immediately fell on Yan. Seeing that Yan's robe was stained with blood, his face was pale, and his spirit was dispirited. Everyone was distressed and angry. Ji Tianqing also couldn't bear it. He said firmly to Yan, "Don't worry, Senior Martial Brother will be fine. I will definitely save you." "No, Senior Martial Brother Tianqing, don't worry about me." Yan's eyes were filled with tears. He desperately shook his head and refused. At this time, the Tianjin sect master finally made up his mind under the instigation of the two sect masters and several elders. When he heard Yan persuading Ji Tianqing, he winked at the purple-robed elder. The purple-robed elder immediately understood. He raised his hand and knocked Yan unconscious. After Yan fell into a coma and calmed down, the Tianjin sect master turned to Ji Tianqing and shouted, "Ji Tianqing, since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. Today, I will make you pay with your life for Xueqi." He would find another excuse to declare war on the Sky Pillar sect in the future. But today, he would first kill Ji Tianqing to pay for Xueqi's life. He would also get rid of a top genius of the Sky Pillar sect and eliminate a major threat. With this thought in mind, the Tianjin sect master stepped out of the crowd and came to the square. Ji Tianqing also walked to the center of the square expressionlessly and stood 20 steps away from the Tianjin sect master. "Sect Master Gao, since you have agreed, please remember the agreement. The people of the various sects have witnessed it with their own eyes." The Heavenly Sword sect master sneered with a sinister look on his face. "Cut the crap. Prepare to die." As he spoke, he mobilized his life's cultivation and circulated his majestic true essence, gathering it in the palm of his right hand. At that moment, the Tianjin sect's outer sect elder suddenly walked quickly to the square and said with a solemn expression, "Sect Master, please wait. Let this subordinate examine Ji Tianqing first. He dared to ask to take your palm, so it's very likely that he has some kind of armor or defensive treasure hidden on his body." The outer sect elder's words were exactly what many people were thinking. Many of the Tianjin sect's elders and deacons believed that Ji Tianqing must have something to rely on since he dared to arrogantly propose such a method. Ji Tianqing frowned but didn't say anything. He stood still and allowed the outer sect elder to examine him. However, the Tianjin sect master sneered disdainfully and waved his hand to stop the outer sect elder. "There's no need to examine him. Ji Tianqing is just an ant in the profound comprehension realm. Even if he wears a Tian origin grade armor, it's impossible for him to block this sect master's palm. He will die without a doubt. Not even dregs will remain." The outer sect elder nodded silently and quickly retreated into the crowd. In the next moment, the Tianjin sect master gathered all of his power into his right palm. His entire body burst out with a monstrous killing intent and five-colored brilliance. In the palm of his right hand, a brilliant five-colored true essence also emerged and condensed into a giant five-colored palm the size of a washbasin. An incomparably violent energy burst out, causing a gust of wind to blow across the square. Sand and pebbles flew everywhere. The ground was also trembling. Even the entire divine sword peak was shaking slightly, as if it couldn't bear the heavy burden. Even the originally bright sky was suddenly filled with wind and clouds, and layers of dark clouds appeared out of nowhere. The Tianjin sect master was still accumulating power, and the five-colored giant palm's power was still increasing. He hadn't even launched an attack yet, but he had already created such a frightening vision of heaven and earth. Suddenly, everyone's hearts were in their throats. Chu Tianqing's expression also changed. He shouted with grief and indignation, "Damn it! Gao Yi, that bastard, actually used the secret technique of 5 Qis unification and wants to use the heaven-shattering palm. The secret technique of 5 Qis unification was a top-secret technique that could greatly increase one's combat power. Only profound comprehension realm experts who had mastered the 5 elements could use this secret technique to increase their combat power by 2 or 3 times in a short period of time. The heaven-shattering palm was also a profound comprehension realm palm technique. With one palm strike, it could tear apart the sky and shatter mountains and rivers. Its power was incomparably terrifying. With the strength of the Tianjin sect master, even a casual palm strike could instantly kill a large number of profound comprehension realm martial artists. In order to completely kill Ji Tianqing, he actually used the secret technique of 5 Qis unification and used his most powerful killing move. He didn't give Ji Tianqing any chance of survival. Chapter 351. The people of the Tianjin sect were excited as they waited to enjoy the tragic scene of Ji Tianqing being blasted into smithereens. On the other hand, the people of the Sky Pillar sect clenched their fists in grief and indignation. Their eyes were bloodshot. Suddenly, the sect master of the Tianjin sect roared as he raised his right palm and slammed it toward Ji Tianqing, who was 20 steps away. Sky-shattering palm. Little bastard, I'll kill you. At that moment, the huge 5-colored palm, which carried a terrifying power that could destroy the heavens and earth, slammed toward Ji Tianqing. He was still expressionless, without the slightest fear or retreat. His eyes were fixed on the 5-colored palm as his nerves were stretched taut to the limit. The moment the sky-shattering palm hit him, a huge black shadow suddenly burst out from his body and soared into the sky. Buzz! A humming sound shook the sky as a huge sword steel, which was thousands of feet tall, appeared. This sword steel was like a cold and lonely mountain that stood in the middle of the square and completely covered the sky. The whole square was plunged into darkness and shrouded in a boundless aura of death. The cold aura of death made the square feel as if winter had arrived. The temperature dropped to the extreme, and everyone felt a chill run down their backs as they shivered. Ji Tianqing's figure was nowhere to be seen. He was completely covered by the domineering giant sword steel that was filled with the aura of death. He was protected by the towering black sword steel as he watched the 5-colored palm hit the giant sword steel. Boom! A loud sound that shook the whole world exploded. The loud sound reverberated across a radius of 100 miles. The entire divine sword peak was trembling and on the verge of collapsing. The terrifying power contained in the sky-shattering palm was completely unleashed, releasing 5-colored flames that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Many martial artists in the square retreated to the edge of the square and protected their bodies with true essence shields. The collision between the 5-colored palm and the black sword steel produced a violent shockwave that formed visible 5-colored air waves that spread in all directions and swept across the entire mountain peak. The ground of the square burst open from the tremors, and huge gullies appeared one after another, extending out dense cracks. The dozen or so palaces and mansions nearby were also shaking because of the blast. Countless cracks appeared on the walls, and countless bricks and tiles fell from the roofs. Even the forests on the mountain peak were swept away by the 5-colored shockwave and turned into a mess. Small trees and weeds were uprooted, and towering trees were snapped in half, collapsing with a loud crash. More than half of the divine sword peak was devastated, as if it was the end of the world. Countless disciples of the Tianjin sect fled in terror. Many experts and powerhouses in the square were dumbfounded as they watched this scene. Everyone was shocked by the terrifying power of the heaven-collapsing palm, but they were also shocked by the mysterious huge sword steel that appeared out of nowhere. Daoist Tianji, who was in the crowd, raised his head to look at the black sword steel. His expression changed dramatically, and his eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Sword spirit. It's the soul of the divine sword. It actually still exists. Could it be in Ji Tianqing's body? At this moment, Daoist Tianji's mood was extremely complicated. He suddenly understood a lot of things and felt excited about it. The sect leader of the Tianjin sect also looked at the huge sword steel in surprise, forgetting his anger for a moment. After a long time, the 5-colored flames that covered the sky and the sun dissipated. The loud noise that reverberated between heaven and earth also gradually disappeared. Only then did everyone see the scene in the square clearly. Only to see that the towering and enormous black sword steel that stood between the heavens and the earth had already disappeared. In the square, which was full of cracks and gullies, Ji Tianqing, dressed in a white robe, was standing tall and straight in the square. His body looked intact, and there were no obvious injuries on his body. It seemed that he hadn't been seriously injured. However, his face was as pale as a sheet of paper, and blood kept gushing out of his mouth and nose, dripping onto his white robe, dyeing it red. He tried his best to stay conscious, and his body trembled slightly. He didn't say a word, and looked coldly at the sect leader of the Tianjin sect. However, he had already suffered extremely serious internal injuries, and his internal organs had been displaced. At the same time, the voice of the Sword Soul Burial of Heaven sounded in his mind. Boy, I haven't recovered my vitality yet, and can only help you block 70% of the heaven-shattering palm's power. I've done my best. Burial of Heaven's voice was hoarse and weak, and it no longer had the mysterious and domineering aura of the past. Obviously, in order to help Ji Tianqing block that palm, he had exhausted all his strength and was seriously injured. Ji Tianqing replied in his mind, Burial of Heaven, thank you. After resolving this grudge, the Tianjin sect won't be able to start a war with the Sky Pillar sect for the time being. I can still buy some time. I will definitely improve my strength as soon as possible and get the Heavenly Star Bead as soon as possible. Burial of Heaven replied weakly, and then fell into a deep sleep. Ji Tianqing looked coldly at the sect leader of the Tianjin sect, and his heart was filled with monstrous hatred. He roared in his heart, Gao Yi. I, Ji Tianqing, will remember this palm strike in my heart. When I merge with the Kenshin bloodline in the future, I will definitely return today's grudge tenfold. At this time, the people in the square finally came to their senses when they saw Ji Tianqing's appearance. Countless people revealed looks of shock as they let out cries of disbelief. Oh my god! How is this possible? Ji Tianqing didn't die? Even his body is unscathed? This is incredible. What kind of treasure does Ji Tianqing have that could block the full force of a Heaven Origin expert's palm strike? What is that majestic sword-shaped stone tablet? Even if it's a Heaven Origin level weapon or treasure, it can't be so indomitable and domineering. No wonder Ji Tianqing dared to block sect leader Gao's palm strike. He has such an amazing treasure on him. That's why he's so fearless. Everyone was shocked, and they couldn't believe or understand it at all. The sect leader of the Tianjin sect couldn't accept this result either. His face was extremely ugly, and his heart was filled with monstrous anger and murderous intent. He stared at Ji Tianqing with resentment and roared hysterically, Ji Tianqing, how can you not die? You have a secret treasure to protect you today, but sooner or later, I will smash you into pieces and let you die without a burial place. Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently, and didn't say anything. The next moment, Yun Yao rushed to his side like a gust of wind. She looked at him anxiously and cried with joy. Junior Tianqing, you're still alive. That's great. No one had expected that Yun Yao, who was always cold and aloof, would lose her composure at this moment. Her clear eyes were also covered with a layer of mist, and her eyes were filled with excitement. Then, Chu Tiansheng and several other elders came over to check on Ji Tianqing's injuries with concern. Chapter 352. The enmity between the two sects had been resolved, and Yan had been rescued. Ji Tianqing could no longer withstand his injuries and spat out a mouthful of blood. Puff! He closed his eyes and lost consciousness as he fell to the ground with his face facing the sky. Yun Yao, who was the closest to him, suddenly let out a worried cry. She quickly stretched out her arms and hugged him in her arms. Chu Tiansheng and the several elders' complexions changed dramatically, and their hearts were in their throats again. The spiritual medicine elder quickly checked Ji Tianqing's condition and transferred his true essence to him to suppress his injuries. Chu Tianqing's face was as gloomy as ice. He turned to look at the Tianjin sect's master and shouted in a deep voice, Gao Yi. This king's disciple Ji Tianqing has taken your palm in public. This matter ends here. If you continue to cause trouble and pester me endlessly, this king will never let you off. The people of the Tianjin sect all thought that Chu Tiansheng would leave with the Sky Pillar sect's people after dropping the sentence. But no one thought that Chu Tiansheng would shout again in a cold tone. The enmity between our two sects has been resolved. But now, it's time to settle the enmity between you and me. Gao Yi. You want justice for your disciple, Xueqi, by hitting my disciple, Tianqing. Now, I want justice for my 3 disciples. You have to take 3 of my moves. Having said that, Chu Tianqing didn't care whether the Tianjin sect's master agreed or not. He strode towards the Tianjin sect's master with a towering killing intent. The Tianjin sect's master's complexion suddenly changed. His eyes were full of anger as he shouted, "Chu Tianxing, you're pestering me endlessly. You're being unreasonable." Just now, in order to kill Ji Tianxing with one palm, he used the 5 Qis unification secret art and the heaven collapsing palm, which consumed about 40% of his strength. At this time, he was a bit weak and only had 60% of his strength left. How could he block 3 of Chu Tianxing's attacks? Chu Tianxing sneered with a cold expression. "You can get justice for your disciple, but can't I do the same for mine?" "Reason. Why don't you talk to my fist?" Then he released his spiritual sense, which covered the sky and the earth, and locked onto the aura of the Tianjin sect master. His whole body surged with monstrous true essence. An invisible and majestic pressure immediately spread out in all directions, enveloping the entire square. The faces of the martial artists from various sects on the square suddenly changed. They fled in all directions, trying to get as far away from the square as possible. The ordinary martial artists were running wildly, while the elders and deacons of the Sky Pillar sect were riding spirit beasts and flying into the sky, overlooking the plaza on the mountain peak. In the blink of an eye, all the warriors in the square ran away, leaving only Chu Tianxing and the Tianjin sect master. Everyone knew that the two of them were Sky Origin stage powerhouses, one of the top powerhouses in the Tianjin region. The battle between the two of them was bound to be devastating, and its power was terrifying. If they didn't leave the plaza in time, they would be killed by the aftermath of the battle. That would be an unjust death. At this point, what was done could not be undone. No matter how angry the Tianjin sect master was, he had to face Chu Tianxing's anger. The Tianjin sect master stood proudly in the middle of the square and shouted loudly, "Chu Tianxing, don't think that I will be afraid of you just because you are the leader of the Tianjin region. You and I will fight sooner or later anyway. Today, I want to see how much real talent you have to be so arrogant." As he spoke, the Tianjin sect master accumulated his life's power and condensed an oval 5-colored light shield around his body. 1,000 peaks of 5 elements shield. This was one of the Sky Origin Stage 5 element secret techniques. It condensed the power of the 5 elements and turned it into a light shield with very strong defensive power. Chu Tianxing saw that the Tianjin sect master was facing a great enemy, and he couldn't help but sneer contemptuously. "Gaoi! I will let you see what the real heaven-breaking palm is. The first palm is to seek justice for my disciple, Yun Yao." As his voice fell, he suddenly raised his right hand and gathered 120% of his power in the palm of his hand. A huge 5-colored giant palm fiercely shot out. At that moment, the square within a kilometer radius was dazzled by the 5-colored light. The air in this area was also squeezed out, and the whole square became a vacuum. The invisible and terrifying pressure was like a 1,000-foot mountain falling from the sky, fiercely suppressing the Tianjin sect master. The Tianjin sect master also waved his palms with all his strength, and a pair of huge 5-colored palm shadows blasted toward Chu Tianxing. "Chu Tianxing, I have practiced the heaven-breaking palm for 30 years. Do I need you to teach me? You are too arrogant." As his voice fell, he struck out with a pair of giant palms, which collided with Chu Tianxing's heaven-breaking palm. Bang! In the earth-shattering noise, the Tianjin sect master's palm shadows were smashed into pieces and dissipated. The heaven-breaking palm erupted with destructive power, bursting with 5-colored flames that covered the square within a kilometer radius. The Tianjin sect master's figure was instantly covered by the heaven-breaking palm. The 1,000 peaks of 5-element shield, which was protecting him, couldn't withstand the terrifying power of the heaven-breaking palm and shattered with a cracking sound. The Tianjin sect master's face changed dramatically. He was hit by the heaven-breaking palm and fell to the ground, letting out a painful groan. The violent 5-colored shockwave spread out and swept across the entire mountain peak in an instant. Dozens of palaces and mansions on the mountain peak were razed to the ground in the blink of an eye. Wherever the 5-colored airwaves passed by, the dense woods were minced into dregs. The splendid palaces and mansions collapsed directly, turning into broken bricks and ruins. Not only that, but the whole Divine Sword Peak was shaking violently, as if it was about to collapse. A huge gully appeared on the mountain wall, and a huge amount of rocks and dust fell down from the sky. The ground on the mountain peak was covered with cracks and gullies, and dust rose into the air. After a long time, the dust gradually dissipated. Many warriors hiding in the distance finally saw the situation on the mountain peak square. The square was in ruins and almost didn't exist anymore. It had become a huge pit with a radius of a kilometer. At the bottom of the pit, the Tianjin sect master was lying in a pile of rubble. His body was covered with dust and debris, and his face was covered with dust. He struggled to jump out of the pit and stood at the edge of the square. He cursed furiously, "Chu Tianxing! You bastard son of a bitch! You!" Before he could finish his words, Chu Tianxing's cold and ruthless roar came from the other side of the square. "Gaoyi! Take my second move. This punch will bring justice to my disciple, Yan Dragon Elephant Divine Fist." As Chu Tianxing's voice fell, a huge golden fist shadow, carrying an unstoppable momentum, blasted toward the Tianjin sect master. If one looked closely, the golden fist shadow condensed into the shape of an ancient divine elephant. Legend has it that in ancient times, divine dragons and divine elephants were the most powerful divine beasts in the world, and were regarded as the symbol of strength. A divine elephant could hold up a star and travel in the vast starry sky. The dragon elephant divine fist that Chu Tianxing used was a set of Tian Yuan level fist techniques that focused on strength. The huge golden fist shadow condensed into an ancient divine elephant that was 100 meters long and 40 meters tall, and instantly drowned the figure of the Tianjin sect master. The Tianjin sect master was injured, and his strength was greatly reduced. He had no time to dodge, and could only condense a shield of vital essence to protect himself. Boom! Another earth-shattering sound burst out, echoing in the sky and shaking the entire Tianjin sect. The golden divine elephant shadow hit the Tianjin sect master, shattering his vital essence shield in an instant. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell heavily to the ground. The entire divine sword peak shook violently, and the mountain peak completely collapsed. Kacha. Chapter 353. The summit of the divine sword peak had turned into ruins. The few patches of lush forest had long since become bare, leaving only broken branches, withered leaves, and wood dregs all over the ground. Not only that, but the mountain peak with a radius of a few thousand meters had also been divided into dozens of small areas by numerous ravines. The areas close to the mountain had collapsed, causing dust and gravel to roll down the mountain. The loud rumbling continued for a long time without stopping. In the center of the mountain peak, there used to be a magnificent palace. But now the palace had long since disappeared, leaving behind only ruins. In the middle of the ruins, there was a huge crater. This crater was created by the dragon elephant divine fist. With a rustling sound, the sect master of the Tianjin sect crawled out of the crater. He was in ragged clothes, with disheveled hair and a dirty face. At this moment, he was covered in dust and looked extremely ugly. No one could recognize him just by looking at his appearance. Moreover, he had suffered a serious internal injury from the dragon elephant divine fist. Blood kept flowing out of his mouth and nose, and he staggered a little. "Chu Tianxing, you bastard who deserves to be hacked to death. I'm going to kill you." The sect master of the Tianjin sect stood on the ruins and roared at the top of his lungs. He was so angry that he was about to go berserk. At this moment, Chu Tianxing's cold voice came from the ruins 100 meters in front of him. "Gaoyi! Take my third move. I'll let you see the true 5-cheese unification. With this strike, I will seek justice for my disciple, Tianxing. Tianluo axe." As Chu Tianxing's voice fell, in the black clouds above the mountain peak, a giant 5-colored palm suddenly appeared, blocking out the sun and covering the sky. The giant palm that was 100 meters wide was obviously formed by Chu Tianxing using the 5-cheese unification secret technique. It contained a terrifying power that could destroy everything. Since this move was called Tianluo axe, it didn't come down from the head, but from the side. The 5-colored palm was like a giant axe that could split heaven and earth. It cut through the layers of dark clouds and fell from the sky to hit the sect master of the Tianjin sect. Boom! Amidst a deafening boom that shook the universe, the 5-colored giant palm struck the mountain peak ruthlessly. At that moment, the entire divine sword peak started to shake violently. Countless amounts of dust and gravel collapsed. Not only that, but the entire mountain peak was also split into 2 halves by the palm. The divine sword peak could no longer withstand the attacks of the Sky Origin stage cultivators. It was split into 2 halves and collapsed with a rumbling sound. For a time, the sound of mountains collapsing reverberated throughout the area within a radius of 100 miles. The ground around Divine Sword Peak was shaking violently. The nearby mountain peaks, which were also the territory of the Tianjin sect, started to tremble and shake. They were greatly affected. The destruction of the Divine Sword Peak caused the Tianjin sect's mountain guarding array to be damaged. The array that covered 100 miles of the sky also became fragmented and full of loopholes. Heaven and earth were filled with a thick layer of dust, flying in the air for a long time without dissipating. Countless disciples of the Tianjin sect were scared out of their wits. They ran away from the Divine Sword Peak in fear. Although, after a quarter of an hour, the deafening noise slowly subsided. Only half of the Divine Sword Peak had collapsed. In the end, only half of the mountain peak remained. However, the main peak had been completely destroyed. What was the point of leaving behind a 1,000-meter-tall pile of rubble? The martial artists all around witnessed the destruction of the Divine Sword Peak with their own eyes. They were so shocked that they couldn't come back to their senses for a long time. Especially the people from the Qianqiu sect and the Zhenwu sect. They had witnessed Chu Tianxing's terrifying strength with their own eyes. They were so shocked that they felt cold all over. They were very glad that it was the Tianjin sect that had provoked the Sky-bearing sect. If it had been them, the foundation of their sect would have been destroyed long ago. At the same time, the sect leader of the Tianjin sect crawled out of the rubble covered in blood. His injuries were extremely severe. His internal organs were severely damaged. He was bleeding profusely from his 7 orifices. His strength had also dropped to its limit. The blood mixed with the dust and turned into a dark red mud that covered his entire body. He lay in the rubble, panting violently. He was like a wild dog that had rolled in a muddy pond. His miserable state was indescribable. At this time, Chu Tianxing condensed a pair of flaming wings and flew above his head. He shouted with a dignified expression, "Gao Yi! 3 moves have passed. Our grievances are settled. However, remember this. My sky-bearing sect has been able to stand in the ancient star realm for thousands of years. Our foundation is not as simple as you think. I am in charge of the Tianjin region. I am willing to let the Tianjin sect stay in the ancient star realm. Only then will the Tianjin sect have a foothold here. Otherwise, if I want to destroy your Tianjin sect, there will be no place for the Tianjin sect in the entire Tianjin region. Today, I am only giving you a warning. If you dare to deal with my sky-bearing sect in the future, I will definitely take your head." The Tianjin sect master lay in the rubble and tried his best to open his blurry eyes. He glared at Chu Tianxing in the sky with resentment and clenched his teeth without saying a word. He finally understood. Although he and Chu Tianxing were both in the heaven origin stage, Chu Tianxing's strength was several levels higher than his. Now that he had fallen into such a miserable state, no matter how angry he was, he would only be humiliating himself. Chu Tianxing coldly glanced at the Tianjin sect master, then turned and flew away with a flick of his sleeve. Swoosh! He flew to the sky 1,000 meters away and came to the side of the elders and deacons of the sky-bearing sect. "Let's go!" Chu Tianxing shouted in a low voice. He released his mount, the dragon eagle, and rode it into the distance. The elders and deacons also carried the unconscious Ji Tianxing and Yan and rode their spirit beasts to follow Chu Tianxing back to the sky-bearing sect. In the rubble of the Divine Sword Peak, the Tianjin sect master stared at the people of the sky-bearing sect leaving. He was extremely angry and manic. He gritted his teeth and cursed in a low voice. "Chu Tianxing, sooner or later, I will wring your head off and use it as a chamber pot. I will also kill everyone in the sky-bearing sect, not even a chicken or a dog. Only the blood of everyone in the sky-bearing sect can wash away the humiliation I suffered today." After the Heavenly Sword sect master viciously swore, he forcefully endured his injuries and struggled to get up, limping down the mountain. The Divine Sword Peak was destroyed, and the entire Tianjin sect was in a mess. Countless handymen and disciples rushed over. Many elders and deacons were busy instructing the handymen and disciples to dig up the rocks and clean up the rubble of the Divine Sword Peak. The Tianjin sect master had just taken a few steps when guest elder Huangfu ran over with an anxious face and quickly reached out to support him. "The sky-bearing sect is simply arrogant and overbearing. They have gone too far. Sect master, Chu Tianxing controls the entire Tianjin region. It's not appropriate for us to fight them head-on for the time being." Chapter 354. The Divine Sword Peak had been destroyed, and the Tianjin sect was in chaos. 4 hours had passed, but the sect still hadn't calmed down. Tens of thousands of odd job workers and thousands of disciples were busy cleaning up the ruins of the Divine Sword Peak. Many elders and deacons were present to direct them. The other peaks were deserted, and it was hard to see anyone walking around. In a quiet palace on the peak where the Spirit Beast Garden was located, a woman was standing in a room. The Blood Moon Infanta was in a room. She was standing by the window and gazing outside. She was lost in thought. When the Divine Sword Peak was in chaos, she escaped from the back of the mountain and hid here. Although she didn't know what had happened, she knew that something big had happened in the Tianjin sect. At this moment, the door was opened, and the Taoist Tianji walked in quickly. The Blood Moon Princess was awakened, and she turned her head to look at him. Seeing the Taoist Tianji's strange expression and his eyes shining, the Blood Moon Princess raised her eyebrows and asked, "Great Priest, what happened? Why are you so happy?" The High Priest came to the front of the Blood Moon Infanta and revealed an excited expression. He lowered his voice and said, "Infanta, we are really lucky today." "Ha ha ha." The Blood Moon Princess frowned and looked at him. She was confused and asked, "Lucky? The Divine Sword Peak has been destroyed. Why are you so happy?" "High Priest, what's going on?" The Great Priest smiled and said excitedly, "The Divine Sword Peak was destroyed by Chu Tianxing. This is the Tianjin sect's business, and I don't feel bad about it. What made me happy is related to the revival of our tribe." The Blood Moon Infanta's interest was immediately aroused. She hurriedly asked, "High Priest, what's the matter?" The Great Priest stroked his white beard and smiled complacently. He said slowly, "Ji Tianqing proposed in front of everyone that he would like to be hit by the Tianjin sect master and use this method to resolve the grudge. However, when the Tianjin sect master hit him, a giant sword steel, which was thousands of feet tall, emerged from his body. I sensed an ancient and special aura from the sword steel. It's the sword soul. The aura of the soul of the divine sword." The Blood Moon Infanta was stunned when she heard the news. It took her a moment to react, and her eyes were filled with shock. "Sword soul? High Priest, do you mean the soul of Kenshin's sword?" "That's right." The High Priest nodded and said playfully, "Princess, do you remember? When we first met Ji Tianqing when we infiltrated the Sky-bearing sect, he was locked in a stone room. You entered the stone room to kill him, but a mysterious black hole emerged from his body and devoured most of your power." The Blood Moon Infanta sneered and said, "That time, 60% of my power was devoured. How could I forget that?" "High Priest, do you mean that the mysterious black hole that devoured my power is the soul of the divine sword?" "That's right." The High Priest sneered and said, "When I sensed the aura of the heavenly star bead from Ji Tianqing's body, it was also because of the soul of the divine sword. Ji Tianqing was only a lowly human youth, but he was able to grow so quickly in just a few months because of the soul of the divine sword. In short, the soul of the divine sword was hidden in Ji Tianqing's body, which made him so special." The Blood Moon Infanta finally understood the series of events after hearing the High Priest's explanation. Her eyes were filled with excitement as she waved her fist and said in a deep voice, "I didn't expect the truth to be so unbelievable. Since the soul of the divine sword is in Ji Tianqing's body, I will find an opportunity to capture him. The soul of the divine sword must know the whereabouts of the heavenly star bead and all of Kenshin's secrets." The Blood Moon Infanta couldn't help but rub her fists as she spoke, eager to give it a try. The High Priest glanced at her and waved his hand. "Infanta, you should give up on this plan. Ji Tianqing used the soul of the divine sword to block the all-out attack of the Tianjin sect master. He was only seriously injured and didn't die. Even the Tianjin sect master couldn't deal with the soul of the divine sword. How can you capture Ji Tianqing?" Moreover, Ji Tianqing was seriously injured and was taken back by the Sky Pillar sect for treatment. The Sky Pillar sect's people will definitely protect him strictly. You won't have a chance to do anything." The Blood Moon Infanta understood that the High Priest's words were reasonable, and she clenched her teeth in anger. "Then what should we do? We know that the soul of the divine sword is in Ji Tianqing's body, but we can't do anything to him?" The High Priest shook his head and revealed an unfathomable smile. "Infanta, I'm treading on thin ice now. I'm carefully sneaking into the Tianjin sect, and I don't dare to leave any traces. You can't easily show yourself, and you can't deal with Ji Tianqing personally. You and I don't have any soldiers or subordinates, so it's impossible for us to accomplish this task. The only thing we can do now is to report to the Demon King and let him make the decision." The Blood Moon Infanta's eyes lit up at the mention of the Blood Demon King. Yes. I have to leave the ancient star realm as soon as possible and return to the headquarters to report this news to my father. With my father's strength, as long as he enters the ancient star realm, he will definitely be able to capture Ji Tianqing and obtain the soul of the divine sword. The high priest smiled and nodded. That's right. It's time to ask the Demon King to come out. We've been planning in the ancient star realm for so long, and everything is ready. We're just waiting for the Demon King to take command. Soon, not only will we be able to capture Ji Tianqing and obtain the soul of the divine sword, but we'll also be able to watch the Tianjin sect and the Sky Pillar sect fight each other. At that time, we can take the opportunity to rescue the Demon King and massacre the ancient star realm. When the sun was high in the sky, Chu Tiansheng and the others returned to the Sky Pillar sect. Several elders sent Ji Tianqing and Yan to the spiritual medicine hall and were busy treating their injuries. Yun Yao did not leave. She stayed by Ji Tianqing's side and assisted the spiritual medicine elder in treating his injuries. Chu Tianxing also temporarily put aside the matters of the sect and stayed by Ji Tianqing's side. The elixir elder arranged for Ji Tianqing to be placed in a secret room for healing, and let him lie on a cold jade bed. After a while, he found out about Ji Tianqing's injuries. Chu Tianxing quickly asked, "Medicine elder, how are Tianqing's injuries?" The medicine elder frowned and said in a serious tone, "Tianqing's injuries are too serious. It's already a miracle that he didn't die on the spot. His internal organs are all damaged. His heart was almost shattered, and all the meridians in his body were broken. It's actually so serious." Chu Tianqing's expression immediately changed, and he narrowed his eyes. Yun Yao also revealed a face full of shock and worry, and her mood became even heavier. The spiritual medicine elder quickly comforted Chu Tianshang and comforted him, "Sect Master, don't worry. Although Tianqing's injuries are serious, this old man will do his best and be able to treat his injuries within half a year. Tianqing's cultivation method is very special. It has already tempered his internal organs and meridians to be very tough, far surpassing cultivators of the same level. It's also because of this that he can still save his life. If it were anyone else, they would have died on the spot." Chu Tianxing frowned and ordered in a serious tone, "Medicine elder, no matter how great the price is, you must treat Tianqing with all your might. Let him wake up as soon as possible and recover from his injuries." "Yes." The medicine elder nodded and began to prepare the healing pills, preparing to treat Ji Tianqing's injuries. Chu Tianxing glanced at Yun Yao and saw that she looked tired and her spirit was a little dispirited. He said in a gentle tone, "Yun Yao, you haven't rested for 2 days. So many things have happened during this period. You must be mentally and physically exhausted. Go back and rest." Yun Yao shook her head. Her eyes were still fixed on Ji Tianqing, who was unconscious. She said in a firm tone, "Master, I don't want to rest. I want to see Junior Tianqing." Chu Tiansheng saw that her attitude was firm, so he stopped persuading her. He sighed silently in his heart. Chapter 355. 10 days passed by very quickly. In these 10 days, the spiritual medicine elder had tried all sorts of methods to heal Ji Tianqing's injuries as soon as possible. He had given Ji Tianqing many top-notch spiritual pills and had to use his qi to heal him every day. Yun Yao had also stayed by Ji Tianqing's side and hadn't slept for 10 consecutive days. Even if she was the #1 genius of the Tianjin region and a Yuan Dan stage expert, her body and mind couldn't take it for 12 consecutive days without rest. She sat beside the ice jade bed and laid on the table. She supported her face with her hands and stared at the sleeping Ji Tianqing. Her beautiful face was filled with fatigue, and her clear eyes were also covered with a thick layer of exhaustion. Fortunately, after 10 days and 10 nights of recuperation, Ji Tianqing finally woke up from his coma. He only felt that his head was dizzy and his consciousness was still a little blurry. He slowly opened his eyes. When his eyes could clearly see the things in front of him, he saw a beautiful woman in white sitting at the stone table beside the bed. Although her beautiful brows were slightly furrowed, her beautiful face was filled with fatigue, and her clear eyes were filled with fatigue, making her look a lot dimmer. But in Ji Tianqing's eyes, in his heart, she was still so beautiful. Moreover, at this moment, she wasn't as cold and arrogant as before. Instead, she had a weak feeling that made people feel pity for her. Even if she was an otherworldly fairy, she also had a weak side and a day when she was exhausted. Ji Tianqing stared at her and moved his lips. His voice was weak as he said, I once read a sentence in a book. When you wake up, the first person you see is also the person you want to see in your dreams. Then she must be the person who cares about you the most. Seeing Yun Yao by the bed with a weak light and a tired face, he didn't know why, but this sentence appeared in his mind and he blurted it out. Yun Yao, who was in a daze, was suddenly awakened by his voice and immediately came back to her senses. She was stunned for a moment. She looked at Ji Tianxing and met his deep eyes. She saw a complicated and indescribable gentleness in his eyes. Tianxing, you're finally awake. That's great. Yun Yao was a little excited and a gratified smile appeared on her pretty face. She quickly reached out her slender hand and held Ji Tianxing's wrist to check his pulse and body condition. After a while, seeing that his pulse was stable and his injuries had mostly recovered, she let out a sigh of relief. Ji Tianxing lay quietly and looked at her with a smile on his face. Senior sister, thank you for taking care of me for so long. Oh right, how many days have I been unconscious? Yun Yao said gently. You have been unconscious for 10 days and 10 nights. Junior brother Tianxing, please wait for a moment. I'll go get the medicine elder to come over and check your injuries. Ji Tianxing shook his head gently. Senior sister, there's no need. I can feel that my injuries are no longer serious. Next, I just need to rest for a few days and I'll be able to recover. That's good. Yun Yao nodded slightly. The secret room quieted down. Neither of them spoke and the atmosphere seemed to be a little charming and awkward. Yun Yao's expression was normal as if she didn't hear the first sentence Ji Tianxing said when he woke up. But Ji Tianxing was sure that she definitely heard that sentence. This was because her sparkling and translucent earlobes had turned a little red again. After a moment of silence, Ji Tianxing said, Senior sister, you must be tired after taking care of me for so long. Go back and rest. Yun Yao's expression was a little hesitant. But if I leave, who will take care of you? Ji Tianxing smiled and said, Don't worry, my injuries have stabilized. Nothing will happen. Moreover, if something really happens, the disciples of the Spirit Medicine Hall will come and take care of me. Senior sister, after the previous incident, the relationship between our sect and the Tianjin sect has deteriorated. Our sect may have many trivial matters to attend to in the near future. You should go and help Master. After listening to his words of persuasion, Yun Yao said goodbye and left. Before leaving, she didn't forget to remind him to focus on healing his injuries. After Yun Yao left, Ji Tianxing was the only one left in the secret room. Enduring the pain from his internal injuries, he supported himself with both hands on the frost jade bed and slowly sat up. He used his spiritual sense to check his injuries. After seeing the condition of his internal organs and sword vein, he couldn't help but reveal a trace of surprise. The burial of heaven helped me block 70% of the power from the palm of the Tianjin sect master, but I still suffered 30% of the power. My internal organs were injured, and several of my sword veins were broken. I didn't expect the sword vein to have such a strong self-healing ability. It healed in just 10 days. Ji Tianxing knew very well that although the spiritual elixir elder's treatment had helped him, it was more due to the sword vein's powerful recovery ability. If it were an ordinary martial artist, even with the spirit medicine elder's painstaking treatment, it would take at least a month for them to recover. Ji Tianxing carefully checked the 9 sword veins in his body and found an even more shocking result. The 8 aperture points on the 8th sword vein had all been refined. His strength had also broken through the 8th tier of the Profound Comprehension Realm and silently reached the 9th tier of the Profound Comprehension Realm. Not only that, but 3 of the apertures on the 9th sword vein had also been refined. This must be because I desperately unleashed my potential and used my strongest true origin when I was hit by Gao Yi's palm. I was severely injured by Gao Yi's palm, but I also took the opportunity to break through and greatly increase my strength. This should be considered a blessing in disguise, right? Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing's heart was slightly comforted, and his eyes revealed a trace of a smile. Subsequently, he felt an incomparably majestic and terrifying medicinal power accumulating in his body. This was the medicinal power of the elixirs he had taken in the past 10 days that had not been completely refined. If he did not refine it, the medicinal power would accumulate in his body and slowly dissipate with the passage of time. That would be too wasteful. Therefore, Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged on the frost jade bed and tried to refine the medicinal power to heal his injuries. His sword vein had just recovered, and his injuries were still very serious. Logically speaking, he should not be cultivating and could only lie down to recuperate. However, he endured his injuries and the severe pain in his body, and with his tenacious will, he gritted his teeth and persevered. As time passed, his injuries began to heal quickly, and the pain in his body gradually lessened. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. 5 days passed quickly. In these 5 days, Yun Yao, the spirit medicine elder, Chu Tiansheng, and Yan had all come to visit him in the secret room. Everyone saw that he was cultivating, so they did not wake him up and disturb him. 5 days later, when Ji Tianxing ended his cultivation, he had finally refined more than half of the medicinal power that had accumulated in his body. His injuries had recovered by 70%, and he could already move freely. Chapter 356. At this moment, Ji Tianxing's strength had reached the limit of the mystic comprehending stage. He only needed to advance one more step and he would be able to break through the shackles and reach the origin core stage. But unfortunately, he was unable to cultivate the 5th level of the Sword Heart Dao after completing the 4th level cultivation method. The 5th level of the Sword Heart Dao required him to combine the sword embryo, 9 sword veins, and 72 apertures to condense the mysterious and vast sword palace within his body. The so-called sword palace used the 9 sword veins to form the 9 palace formation, and used the sword embryo and 72 apertures as the foundation to increase the power and changes of the sword palace. Once the sword palace was successfully condensed, it would cause the power of true origin to increase by 9 times and possess a myriad of changes and miraculous effects. All in all, the sword palace was a miraculous secret technique that changed the internal structure of the human body and ingeniously combined the human body with the stars. But unfortunately, the cultivation method of the 5th level of the sword palace was obviously not something that ordinary people could cultivate. Ji Tianxing consecutively tried a few tens of times, but he failed every time as expected. In the end, he had no choice but to give up and continue to circulate his cultivation method to heal his injuries. The facts proved that what the Burial of Heaven said at that time was completely correct. He only had a mortal body, and being able to cultivate the 4th level of the Sword Heart Dao had already reached the limit. If he was unable to fuse with the Kenshin bloodline, he would be unable to cultivate the 5th level of the Sword Heart Dao in this lifetime. His strength could only stop at the perfection of the mystic comprehending stage, and he would never be able to reach the origin core stage. Ji Tianxing had already secretly decided to go into closed-door cultivation to heal his injuries for a few more days. After his injuries were healed and his strength recovered to its peak state, he would go to the Dragon Mountain ancient tomb to try to crack the Heaven Origin formation and search for the Heavenly Star Pearl. After all, after he reached the perfection of the mystic comprehending stage, the power of his true origin and true combat strength were comparable to an ordinary 2nd-level origin core stage expert. Perhaps he had a trace of hope to crack the Heaven Origin formation of the Dragon Mountain ancient tomb. In the north of the Heavenly Stella region, there was a vast and prosperous area about a few 100 million miles away. This area was the center of the profound sky continent. It was the most bustling and prosperous place, and it was also the sacred land of martial arts where dragon veins gathered and experts were as numerous as the clouds. The experts of the various clans in the profound sky continent called this area was called the Central State. In the southern area of the Central Plains, there was a continuous, lofty and magnificent mountain range, and it was called the Sky Pierce Mountain Range. In the center of the sky-connecting mountain range, there was a 10,000-meter-tall towering peak shrouded in clouds and mist on top of the Dragon Vein treasure land. This giant peak was called Heaven-Reaching Peak, and it was one of the tallest and most sacred mountains in the world. At the foot of Heaven-Reaching Peak, there was a wide and enormous divine path that extended along the steep mountain to the summit. However, from halfway up the mountain, the Heaven-Reaching Peak was covered by a thick fog. Half of Heaven-Reaching Peak stood in the sea of clouds, like a celestial mountain in the sky. A few magnificent and majestic palaces stood at the peak of the mountain, looking like the palaces of the gods. This was the sacred land of the human race, the most sacred and majestic human imperial court on the continent. There were 3 palaces, 9 halls, and 18 courtyards in the imperial court. Every palace and mansion was built to be huge and spacious, revealing a majestic and domineering aura that could shock the heavens and the earth and suppress the 4 seas. The location of these palaces and mansions implied the mathematical changes of the heavens and earth, the sun, moon, and stars, and the profound principles. Anyone who came before the imperial court would feel a divinity like the descent of the gods, a majesty like the manifestation of heaven's will. They would kowtow and worship with reverence and devotion. The entire imperial court seemed to have gathered the faith of billions of people, the spiritual chi of billions of mountains and rivers. Standing in the sea of clouds, It was as dazzling as the sun. Currently, inside the Palace of Heaven and Earth inside the imperial court, there was a bright, spacious and elegant study room. A middle-aged man dressed in a golden dragon robe and wearing a purple gold dragon jade crown was sitting before a spacious table. He was focused on reading the memorials and letters. This person had a tall and sturdy figure, with a dignified appearance. Between his brows, there was a sense of righteousness. Besides the domineering aura that looked down on the common people, there was a vast and majestic aura that merged with the heavens and earth. He only sat upright before the table, but he was like a god looking down on the common people of the world. On the vermilion table, there were a few thick stacks of ancient books, memorials, and letters. These were all documents from the various regions of the southern continent. There was also a simple bronze incense burner on the table. Purple wood jade sandalwood burned in the burner, emitting a faint green smoke, causing the study room to be filled with a fresh and elegant sandalwood scent. This rare purple wood jade sandalwood had the miraculous effect of refreshing the mind and cleansing the soul. At this time, the man in the golden robe picked up a letter. Seeing the words Tianqian region at the bottom right of the letter, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. After removing the seal, he took out a piece of golden paper and carefully read the contents. Greetings, Your Majesty. I am now the leader of the Tianqian sect in the Tianqian region. I live in the ancient star realm and protect the common people. However, the leader of the Tianqian region, the Sky Pillar sect, has dominated the ancient star realm for thousands of years. They have done whatever they want, oppressing the common people. I have encountered a great disaster recently. May I be so bold as to report the grievances to Your Majesty and tell you the reason? Without a doubt, the man in the golden robe was the leader of the imperial court, the leader and guardian of the human race on the continent, Emperor Long Xuanquan. After reading the contents of the letter, he put it on the table and couldn't help but frown. After pondering for a moment, he said in a deep voice, Commander Yu, send a message to the imperial tutor. I have something important to discuss with him in the study room. Outside the door of the study room, there was a 2-meter-tall burly man in golden armor. He immediately bowed and accepted the order, then quickly left. Not long after, Commander Yu brought a white-haired old man in a purple robe with a golden horsetail whisk to the door of the study room. This white-haired old man was thin and looked old, but he had white hair and a youthful complexion. He was hale and hearty. His aura was ethereal and mysterious. His body was as vast as the stars and as leisurely as the floating clouds. He was a true master. Your Majesty, the imperial tutor is here. Commander Yu bowed and reported. The imperial preceptor held the horsetail whisk and stepped into the study. He bowed slightly to the emperor and said with an indifferent expression, Greetings, Your Majesty. May I know what Your Majesty has summoned me here for? The emperor didn't say much and handed the letter to the imperial tutor. After the imperial tutor finished reading, he said in a serious tone, Imperial tutor, there are changes in the Tianqian region. The Tianqian sect and the Sky Pillar sect are in conflict. A war is imminent. I think there is something fishy about this matter. What do you think, Imperial tutor? The imperial tutor put down the letter and stroked his long white beard. His ruddy face revealed an unfathomable smile. Your Majesty, for the past 10 years, I have been studying the stars on the star-plucking platform and comprehending the mysteries of the heavens. I have long discovered that the demonic qi in the Tianqian region is surging. There must be remnants of the demonic clan causing chaos. It will not be peaceful. Chapter 357. Hearing the imperial tutor's words, the emperor nodded slightly in agreement. I vaguely remember that 1,000 years ago, the demon emperor caused chaos in the Tianqian region and wantonly slaughtered our people. At that time, Kenshin helped the imperial court to kill the demon emperor and seemed to have suppressed the demon emperor in the Tianqian region. When the words sword god were mentioned, a wisp of bright light flashed within the muddy eyes of the imperial preceptor, and dense recollection gushed out from his eyes. He was a little absent-minded. After a moment of silence, he nodded and said, Yes, 1,000 years have passed in the blink of an eye. After Kenshin suppressed the demon emperor, a junior in the Tianqian region received a few words of advice from Kenshin and established a sect on the formation that sealed the demon emperor. It is the current Sky Pillar sect. The emperor frowned and said in a deep voice, The demon qi in the Tianqian region is surging. The Tianqian sect and the Sky Pillar sect are about to go to war. I'm afraid this matter will involve the demon emperor's seal. It seems that I have to send someone to the Tianshan region to stabilize the situation. Otherwise, when the demon emperor is born, it will bring a bloody storm and monstrous slaughter to our people. The imperial tutor held the horsetail whisk and bowed with a solemn expression. He said in a solemn tone, "The emperor is right." This old man agrees. The emperor nodded and had a thoughtful expression. He asked, "Then in the imperial tutor's opinion, which divine general should I send?" The imperial tutor weighed the pros and cons and shook his head. "Emperor, it's not appropriate to send the 4 divine generals. The 4 divine generals have their own duties. They have to guard the central state, resist the armies of the east, west, and north, and protect the safety of the imperial court. They bear a great responsibility. In this old man's opinion, there is one person who is very suitable to go to the Tianshan region to settle this matter." The emperor raised his eyebrows and asked in confusion, "Oh? I'd like to hear the details." The imperial tutor stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Emperor Yun Shao." The emperor frowned. After pondering for a moment, he nodded slightly to express his agreement. Yun Shao is already over 20 years old. Although he has reached the Sky Origin realm, he has only trained in the central state and has not gone to the 9 southern regions. I have long thought to find a suitable opportunity to send him to the south to patrol our territory. It can not only train him but also increase his experience. The chaos in the Tianshan region is a suitable opportunity. The imperial preceptor smiled and added, "Moreover, one of the 3 heavenly concubine candidates is from the Sky Pillar sect in the heavenly stellar region. The emperor can use this opportunity to send the emperor to the Tianshan region, and let him see the heavenly consort candidate personally. Regardless of whether it succeeds or not, the position of heavenly consort must be personally chosen by the emperor." The emperor lord nodded and said, "That's good. Then this emperor will send Cloud Sky to the heavenly stellar region." After saying that, he ordered Commander Yu at the door, "Commander Yu, send a message to Yu Tianzi. Tell him to come to the study immediately." Commander Yu bowed and accepted the order. He quickly turned and left to pass down the order. At the border between the Tianshan region and the Yong'an region, there was a boundless mountain range. This mountain range was extremely vast. There were at least 100,000 mountain peaks that rose and fell continuously. Therefore, this area was called the 100,000 Mountains. The 100,000 mountains were desolate and uninhabited. Although there were many heavenly materials and earthly treasures and resources, they were occupied by countless demons and devils. This area was very dangerous, and it was located at the border of the 2 regions. Therefore, it became a forbidden area for humans. No one dared to set foot in it. In the deepest part of the 100,000 mountains, there was an area covered by black clouds. In this area, there were more than a dozen towering mountains. It was also a place where the spiritual chi of heaven and earth gathered. On the surface, this area was dead silent. The sky, the earth, and the mountains were filled with a gloomy fog. In fact, there were countless caves and tunnels inside the mountains and underground. They had long been built into a huge underground city. This gloomy underground city was the Blood Demon City, where the Blood Demon tribe was located. In the palace in the depths of the Blood Demon City, a tall and graceful figure was walking on the main road of the palace. She was wearing a black robe with a cloak and a veil. Only a pair of dark red eyes could be seen. On both sides of the wide black stone road, there was a demon warrior in black armor every 100 steps. They were standing solemnly with halberds in their hands. They were like stone statues. Seeing the black-robed woman walk by, the black-armored guards knelt down on one knee. They clenched their left fists and beat their chests. They saluted and said, "Princess." Without a doubt, this black-robed woman was the Blood Moon Princess. She ignored the black-armored guards on both sides of the road and walked straight to the end of the road. Then, she stepped into a dark and cold palace. The palace was dark and gloomy. The air was filled with a cold demonic aura and a strong smell of blood. The seemingly spacious and lofty palace was like the netherworld. It was dead silent and filled with the smell of death. However, the Blood Moon Princess did not feel uncomfortable in this palace. Instead, she felt warm and intimate as if she had returned to her hometown and entered her mother's embrace. She walked into the depths of the palace and stood outside a dark cloud. Then, she bowed respectfully. "Greetings, father." The black cloud was at least 100 meters in radius. It occupied a spacious hall and was constantly churning and surging. Along with the surging of the dark cloud, a rhythmic snoring sound could be heard. Then, gusts of cold wind gushed out. Hearing the voice of the Blood Moon Princess, the snoring sound in the dark clouds stopped abruptly. The dark palace quieted down. The dark clouds surged a few times. Suddenly, 2 scarlet red lights lit up. The 2 scarlet red lights were 3 meters in radius. They were actually a pair of huge eyes. The scarlet red eyes and dark green pupils revealed a cold and indifferent aura that despised life. The huge bloody eyes looked at the Blood Moon Princess. A dull voice came from the dark cloud. "Blood Moon, my daughter, why did you come back at this time? Could it be that you and the High Priest failed and were driven out of the Star Ancient Realm by the Sky Pillar sect?" The Blood Moon Princess immediately explained, "Father, that is not the case. I came back this time to tell you a piece of good news. Our plan is about to succeed. The Tianjin sect was used by us and formed a blood feud with the Sky Pillar sect. Soon we will go to war. The High Priest hopes that Father can personally go to the Star Ancient Realm to take charge of the situation and welcome the return of the Demon Emperor." Hearing this, the huge dark cloud immediately collapsed and dissipated. A huge black beast that was 100 meters in length immediately appeared in the palace and was exposed in front of the Blood Moon Princess. This ferocious beast was as big as a hill. Its appearance was as thick and sturdy as a black bear. However, there were several rows of sharp spikes on its back. It also had 4 broad black wings. On its bloated belly, there were 8 thick legs and a bloody mouth full of sharp teeth. What a ferocious and terrifying monster! Chapter 358. As far back as the Blood Moon Infanta could remember, her father, the Blood Demon King, had an ugly and ferocious appearance. Moreover, she knew that when she reached the Sky Origin Realm and became a Demon King, her appearance wouldn't be much better than her father's. This was the fate of the Demon Clan. As they became stronger, their bodies would become uglier and more ferocious. The Blood Moon Infanta was already used to it, so when she saw her father's mountain-like body, she wasn't surprised or disgusted. Gurgle. Gurgle. The Blood Demon King's huge and ugly body started to shrink rapidly, and black mist gushed out of it. In the blink of an eye, his body disappeared, and he became a 3-meter-tall giant with dark purple skin. The giant had a pair of beast-like feet, long red hair, and a body covered with thick purple hair. He looked like a dark purple gorilla. He wore a bone-tooth necklace around his neck and a black python skin apron around his waist. He sat on a throne made of skulls, and his body emitted a violent and bloodthirsty aura. He used a secret technique to hide his body and condensed it into a Demon Clan body. Although his body still looked barbaric and ugly, it still looked like a normal Demon Clan body. It wasn't as ferocious and terrifying as his original body. Blood Moon, the news you brought back made your father very pleased. In the past few years, you helped the High Priest move in the Ancient Realm. You really got a lot of training and growth. The Blood Demon King's tone was filled with gratification and pride, and he was very satisfied with the Blood Moon Infanta's performance. The Blood Moon Infanta bowed and said, "Father, apart from this, I have an even more surprising news to tell you." "What news?" The Blood Demon King raised his eyebrows, and his scarlet eyes were filled with expectation. The Blood Moon Infanta smiled and said, "The Sky Pillar Sect's master, Chu Tianxing, accepted a new personal disciple, and his name is Ji Tianxing. This kid is only 17 years old, but he grew rapidly in just a few months. He also destroyed our plans and killed many of our warriors. The High Priest unexpectedly found that this kid's body contained the soul of the godly sword." Hearing this news, the Blood Demon King's eyes turned red, and they flickered with a bloody light. Divine Sword Soul? Could it be the soul of Kenshin's sword? The Blood Moon Infanta nodded and said, "Yes." "Ha ha ha." The Blood Demon King raised his head and laughed. His voice was as deep as a lion's roar. "That's great. This is an unexpected surprise. A huge surprise." After laughing for a while, the Blood Demon King finally calmed down. He clenched his fists and said in a low and solemn voice, "Very good. This king has worked hard for 100 years and finally found a clue to Kenshin. This king has been asleep for too long. It's time for me to reappear in this world and start a massacre. This time, I will personally lead the elite warriors to the ancient star realm to realize the great plan of our clan's revival. As long as I capture that human brat and obtain the soul of the divine sword, I will be able to learn all of Kenshin's secrets and find Kenshin's heavenly star bead. After His Majesty the Demon Emperor is born, this king will massacre the heavenly stellar region." The Blood Demon King laughed wildly, his tone full of anticipation and bloodthirst. Blood Moon Infanta also grinned and sneered silently. 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. Ji Tianqing had been recuperating in the secret chamber for 5 days and 5 nights. His injuries were finally healed, and his strength had also returned to its peak state. On the morning of the 6th day, he finally ended his cultivation. After opening his eyes, Ji Tianqing sat on the icy jade bed and pondered silently. Now that my injuries have healed and my strength has fully recovered, I have to go to the Dragon Mountain tomb and try to break the Tianyuan array. The situation in the ancient star realm is already so tense. The Tianjian sect has a grudge with our sect, and they will definitely come back to take revenge. The demon race is also so rampant. They must be trying to rescue the peerless demon that our sect is suppressing. I have to get the heavenly star bead as soon as possible and merge with the Kenshin bloodline. Only then can I have the ability to protect myself in such a chaotic situation. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing left the secret chamber and bid farewell to the Elixir Elder. Seeing his injuries recover so quickly, the Elixir Elder was quite shocked and felt that it was unbelievable. The Elixir Elder originally thought that with his meticulous treatment, Ji Tianqing's injuries would heal in a month, and his strength would recover in 3 months. However, he didn't expect Ji Tianqing to heal his injuries in only 20 days, and his strength had also fully recovered. While the Elixir Elder was surprised, he also gave Ji Tianqing a bottle of top-grade black-level elixirs to help him stabilize his martial arts foundation and continue to heal his injuries. After leaving the Elixir Hall, Ji Tianqing rushed to the sky-raising palace on the Red Cloud Peak to meet his master, Chu Tianqing. Chu Tianqing had given a strict order that the Dragon Mountain Tomb's array was very profound and dangerous, and the sect's elders and deacons were not allowed to try to break it without permission. Therefore, Ji Tianqing had to get Chu Tianqing's approval if he wanted to try to break the ancient tomb's array. He waited for a moment in the sky-raising palace, and Chu Tianqing quickly entered the main hall and came to him. Chu Tianqing looked at him a few times, and his face was full of surprise. He said in shock, "Tianqing, you've only been recuperating for 20 days, and your injuries are already healed?" Ji Tianqing bowed and said, "Yes, master." "Well, very good." Chu Tianqing nodded with a gratified face and said with a smile, "Since your injuries have been healed, master is relieved. Tell me, why did you come to see master today?" Ji Tianqing's face was solemn, and he replied in a solemn tone, "Master, the Tianjian sect is now being used by the demon race, and their ambitions are clear as day. Although our sect is strong, it is difficult to guard against their schemes, and we must find ways to strengthen our defenses. Since discovering the Dragon Mountain tomb, Disciple has been studying the Tianyuan array with great concentration. I have consulted the Grand Elder many times and read all kinds of ancient books and information. After 2 months of hard work, Disciple has grasped the method to break the Tianyuan array. So, Disciple wants to try his best to see if I can break the Tianyuan array." Chu Tianqing frowned, and a trace of shock flashed in his eyes. "Tianqing, are you serious? That's the Tianyuan array, and even master is helpless. How can you possibly find a way to break it?" Ji Tianqing said with a serious expression, "Master, Disciple has another fortuitous encounter that allowed me to comprehend the method to break the Tianyuan array. Please allow Disciple to try to break the Tianyuan array." This matter was too shocking, and Chu Tianqing was slightly hesitant. He said in disbelief, "Tianqing, if you want to break the Tianyuan array, you must have the strength of the Tianyuan stage. At the very least, you must be an Origin Core stage powerhouse to have the qualifications to try to break the Tianyuan array. And you," Ji Tianqing said in a firm tone, "Disciple has reached the perfection of the Mystic Comprehension stage, and my strength is comparable to a second-level Origin Core stage powerhouse." Chu Tianqing hesitated and frowned for a long time before he nodded and agreed to this matter. "All right, master will allow you to try once, but to be on the safe side and to avoid any accidents, master will send Yun Yao to go with you. Brothers, give me a few recommendation votes." Chapter 359. After receiving Chu Tianqing's order, Ji Tianqing took his leave. He immediately rushed to the White Cloud Hall to explain this matter to Yun Yao. Yun Yao was very shocked when she learned that he was going to crack the Dragon Mountain Ancient Tombs array. She found it unbelievable. However, when she saw Ji Tianqing's confident look, she had confidence and expectations in him. The two of them did not waste any time. They left the White Cloud Hall on their spirit cranes and rushed to Dragon Mountain. After arriving at Dragon Mountain, the two of them entered the mine halfway up the mountain. They followed the complicated mine tunnel and rushed to the depths of the underground. Not long after, the two of them arrived at the dilapidated ancient square and stopped outside the Tianyuan array. The five-colored light shield was still shining with a dazzling brilliance and exuding a majestic aura. Outer sect elder Chu Huaishan and several deacons were guarding the Dragon Mountain ancient tomb outside the Tianyuan array as usual. Seeing Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao arrive, Chu Huaishan quickly walked to them and greeted them. Yun Yao, Tianxing, why are the two of you here? Is there an order from the sect leader? Greetings, Elder Chu. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao bowed to Chu Huaishan. Ji Tianxing went straight to the point and said, Elder Chu, we are here to try to crack the ancient tomb's protective array. Chu Huaishan was stunned for a moment. His face was full of shock and disbelief. Tianxing, this Tianyuan array is extremely exquisite and unfathomable. He stopped halfway because he knew that Ji Tianxing must be aware of this as well. There was no need for him to say more. Therefore he asked directly, Tianxing, does the sect leader know about this? Ji Tianxing nodded. I have already asked the sect leader. Chu Huaishan did not say anything else after receiving an affirmative answer. Ji Tianxing continued, Elder Chu, eldest senior sister and I will try to crack the array. We will have to trouble Elder Chu and the deacons to protect us. No problem. Chu Huaishan nodded without hesitation. Then, Chu Huaishan turned and left the ruined square to explain the situation to the deacons. When everyone learned that Ji Tianxing was going to attempt to break the formation, they were both shocked and delighted. Their hearts were filled with anticipation. Soon, the deacons spread out and stood guard around the Tianyuan Grand Formation. Chu Huaishan stayed by Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's side to protect them. If there was a sudden emergency, he would come to their rescue. Ji Tianxing paced around the Tianyuan Grand Array. His sharp eyes observed the array and prepared to break it. Although he was already very familiar with this great formation, he had observed it many times before. But just in case, he had to carefully observe and study it again. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. Ji Tianxing walked around the Tianyuan Grand Array and observed the entire array clearly. Then, he began to break the array. This Tianyuan Grand Array uses a total of 5 Tianyuan Grand Array formations. From the derivation of the 5 elements, to the stabilization of the 6 directions, to the 7 stars of the heavenly dipper 7 stars, to the 8 extreme dragon lock, and to the 9 cauldrons of heaven and earth. The complexity increases with each step. I'll start with the derivation of the 5 elements. He analyzed it in his mind for a moment. Then, he used his array formation skills. He continuously waved his palms and sent rays of true essence into the 5-colored light shield. He began to break the array. Legend has it that after heaven and earth were born, the power of the 5 elements evolved and formed all living things in the world. The derivation of the 5 elements, mutually reinforcing and restraining each other. It is an endless cycle. If a Tianyuan elite has already mastered the power of the 5 elements, he can use the power of the 5 elements to break the array and gradually break the derivation of the 5 elements. Unfortunately, I only mastered the power of metal and fire. I can only use fire to restrain metal, and then use metal to restrain wood. Ji Tianxing's clear and complete thoughts emerged in his mind. He used the power of the red flame primordial fire to break the array and restrain the power of metal in the derivation of the 5 elements. His expression was calm as he focused on the Tianyuan Grand Array. He waved his palms and made a special gesture to break the array. His expression was calm and steady. He seemed to have a well-thought-out plan. He did not hesitate at all. He had the demeanor of an array formation master. Yun Yao stood silently beside him. She stared at him. She felt that there was an invisible aura coming from him. Junior brother Tianxing is growing very quickly. He is becoming more and more like a powerful elite, she thought to herself. A hint of admiration flashed across her clear eyes. As time passed, Ji Tianxing waved his palms faster and faster. The power of the red flame primordial fire also became more and more violent. After an hour, he finally managed to restrain the power of metal. This is great. The array formation skills that Dragon Sun Ba Xia taught me can indeed break the Tianyuan Grand Array. Although I am still far from breaking the derivation of the 5 elements, this is the first step to success. Reality proved that his array formation skills could break the Tianyuan Grand Array. This boosted his confidence. He was filled with excitement and anticipation. He did not hesitate to channel his metal elemental true essence into the array. He used his array formation skills to restrain the wood elemental energy. Soon, another hour had passed. The wood elemental energy in the array was also temporarily restrained. After this, Ji Tianqing still had to use water to restrain fire, wood to restrain earth, and earth to restrain water. He had not mastered the power of these three elements, but he had already prepared the corresponding materials to break the array. He took out 2 ice blue gemstones from his spatial ring and held them in his palms. These 2 gemstones were water spirit stones. They contained majestic and pure water elemental energy. Ji Tianqing channeled the elemental energy in the water spirit stones. He waved his palms and released an ice blue glow. It was indeed able to restrain the fire elemental energy in the array. Time passed silently. Yun Yao and Chu Huaishan watched Ji Tianqing break the array. The surprise in their eyes became more and more intense. Both of them could not believe that Ji Tianqing, who was only at the mystic comprehending realm, had such profound array formation skills. 6 hours later, Ji Tianqing finally completed the first step of breaking the 5 elements derivation array. He had achieved the effect of restraining the 5 elements. Next, he still had to complete the effect of the mutual generation of the 5 elements. He channeled his true essence again. He waved his palms and released an true essence glow. He used fire to produce earth, metal to produce water. Then, he used the water spirit stones, earth spirit stones, and wood spirit stones to complete the step of mutual generation of the 5 elements. In this way, the 5 elements derivation array was completely under his control. The generation and restraint of the 5 elements were also under his control. Ji Tianqing spent another 4 hours manipulating the generation and restraint of the 5 elements derivation array. He finally reached the 3rd step of breaking the array, unifying it into one. Yun Yao and Chu Huaishan were both shocked when Yi Futian used his matrix breaking technique to gradually undo the 5 elements matrix and cause the power of the 5 elements to gradually dissipate. He actually succeeded. Ji Tianqing had actually broken the 5 elements derivation array and temporarily closed the array. This 5 elements derivation array was only a small part of the Tianyuan array. Ji Tianqing still needed to break 4 more arrays before he could truly break the Tianyuan array. Chapter 360. With Ji Tianqing's strength and means, he could not completely break the 5 elements derivation formation. He could only temporarily shut down the formation, which could be maintained for about 7 days. After 7 days, the 5 elements derivation formation would naturally resume operation. However, Yun Yao, Chu Huaishan, and the other deacons were shocked and incredulous that he could do this. While everyone was still in awe, Ji Tianqing had already stopped. He quickly sat on the ground and held a spirit stone in his hand to restore his true core strength. In the past 10 hours, he had continuously used his true core strength to break the formation. Not only had he consumed a lot of true core strength, but he was also very tired. Seeing this, Yun Yao immediately sat down in front of him and stretched out her hands to support his palms, transferring her true core strength to him. Originally, Ji Tianqing needed to cultivate for 6 to 8 hours and consume a spirit stone to restore his true core strength. However, with Yun Yao's help, his true core strength was restored after 4 hours. After he finished cultivating, Ji Tianqing nodded to Yun Yao and cast a grateful look at her. He continued to break the formation and began to break the second formation of the Tianyuan formation, the Big Dipper 7 Stars formation. Seeing this, Chu Huaishan suddenly frowned in confusion and asked subconsciously, "Tianqing, why did you break the Big Dipper 7 Stars formation first? Shouldn't you break the 6 Direction Stabilization formation next?" Not only Chu Huaishan, but the other deacons around the formation were also puzzled. Ji Tianqing quickly explained to Chu Huaishan, "Elder Chu, this Tianyuan formation uses the 5 elements formation very cleverly. The order of breaking the formation is also hidden in the heavenly mystery. If you break the 6 Direction Stabilization formation in order from easy to difficult, you will definitely detonate the formation and cause the ancient tomb and the entire Dragon Mountain to be destroyed." Chu Huaishan suddenly understood and nodded in agreement. "I see. Previously, I and the other elders had studied it for half a month. Although we had figured out several methods of setting up the array, we were unable to deduce the order of breaking the array. That was why we didn't dare to act rashly." Back in the ancient Star Palace, Boss Ya had reminded Ji Tianqing that the order of deciphering the Tianyuan Grand Formation was of utmost importance when he taught Ji Tianqing about the formation. Once there was a mistake in the order of breaking the formation, it would definitely lead to the most serious consequences. The formation would immediately self-destruct. Ji Tianqing kept this in mind and focused on studying, deducing, and rehearsing hundreds of times before he was certain that the order of breaking the formation would be accurate. The index and middle fingers of both of his hands joined together to form sword fingers, forming hand seals, constantly drawing arcs in the air, forming mysterious hand seals, shooting out beams of true essence brilliance. Streaks of true essence light entered the array and immediately produced a huge reaction, causing earth-shattering changes. The five-colored light barrier within 1,000 meters immediately lit up with a soaring brilliance, forming five-colored clouds within a radius of 10 miles. The entire Tianyuan Grand Formation also began to operate rapidly. Dense silver light spots appeared on the five-colored light barrier. There were as many as 90,000 of them, like a vast sea of stars. Those silver light spots bloomed with dazzling starlight, reflecting on the five-colored clouds above the formation. Suddenly, a dazzling, vast, and mysterious starry sky map appeared before everyone's eyes. Everyone looked up at the clouds and starry sky map in the sky, watching the 90,000 stars constantly moving, displaying the scene of stars changing positions. They were all dumbfounded. Especially the deacons, who had been obsessed with Array Dao for half their lives, but had never touched the mysteries of the Tianyuan Grand Formation Dao. At this moment, they were trembling with excitement when they saw the mysteries of the Tianyuan 7 stars array and the scene of stars changing positions. This is incredible. To be able to see such a magnificent array, I can die without regrets. This is definitely a miracle. Such an extraordinary array is not something that can be set up by humans. It's like a miracle. Ji Tianqing is only in the mystic comprehending realm, but his array Dao attainments are far beyond all of us. This really makes us feel ashamed. Sigh. Compared to a 17-year-old youth like him, our 100 years of life have all been wasted. It's a great fortune for our sect to have Ji Tianqing. The deacons were filled with excitement and emotion. They looked at the starry sky map with infatuation, their excitement overflowing with words. Previously, when everyone heard that Ji Tianqing was going to try to break the array, they were worried and apprehensive, fearing that he would make a mistake. After all, sect leader Chu Tianxing had solemnly said that the Tianyuan Grand Formation was incomparably profound. If there was any mistake in breaking the array rashly, it would cause irreversible consequences. The entire array and ancient tomb would self-destruct. Now, everyone had seen Ji Tianqing break the array with their own eyes. Looking at the magnificent starry sky map, all their worries and apprehensions dissipated and were replaced by shock and amazement. Even Yun Yao was shocked by the mysteriousness and vastness of the starry sky map. She stood beside Ji Tianqing and watched as he focused on breaking the formation. She saw that he was brimming with confidence and the aura of someone who could pass judgment on everything. She felt that he was even more precious and worthy of admiration. Compared to those flamboyant and arrogant young talents, Tianqing's calm, wise, confident, and reserved temperament is more admirable. If others could see him now, I wonder how many girls would fall in love with him and be charmed by him. As this thought flashed through Yun Yao's mind, the corners of her mouth curled up into a beautiful smile. Unknowingly, another 8 hours had passed. The colorful clouds that covered the sky and the vast starry sky map formed by 90,000 stars finally dissipated gradually. Ji Tianqing continuously shot out tens of thousands of true essence rays to break the array. He operated the Big Dipper 7 stars array thousands of times and finally closed the array temporarily. The Big Dipper 7 stars array was more profound and powerful than the 5 elements derivation array. Therefore, even if he tried his best, he could only temporarily close the array for 6 days. After Ji Tianqing stopped, his face was already pale, and bean-sized beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. His true essence was exhausted again, and he was extremely exhausted. He had to take out a spirit stone and sit down to recover his power. Yun Yao sat in front of him again and looked into his eyes. She pressed her palms together and helped him recover his power. After 6 hours, Ji Tianqing had recovered 80% of his power. He endured the physical and mental exhaustion and continued to break the Tianyuan Grand Formation. There are still 3 arrays to break, but I only have 6 days. This time, I will break the 6-direction stabilization array. Although Chu Huaishan and the other deacons were shocked and amazed by him breaking the Big Dipper 7 stars array again. However, Ji Tianqing knew very well that it would be more difficult to break the array later. Moreover, he was very pressed for time and could not relax at all. Chapter 361. Compared to the Big Dipper 7 Stars Formation, the 6-direction stabilization formation was slightly simpler. Ji Tianxing spent 8 hours to crack this formation. Of course, after cracking this formation, he was also exhausted. He used up all his true essence and was on the verge of collapsing. Even if he immediately cultivated and used spirit stones to recover his true essence, it would take at least 2 to 3 days to recover. After all, his mental strength was extremely weak, and his consciousness was a little blurry. Damn it! There are only 2 formations left, and I can't hold on anymore. I'm still not strong enough. Ji Tianxing was full of hatred and unwillingness. If his strength was above the origin core realm, he might be able to hold on for another 2 days, and it was very likely that he could completely crack the entire Big Dipper formation. But now, he could only sit on the ground and absorb the true essence from the spirit stones. Yun Yao looked at him with concern and asked gently, "Junior brother Tianxing, are you okay? Can you still hold on?" Ji Tianxing raised his head and looked at her. His gaze just happened to meet her clear eyes that were filled with worry. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind. He looked at Yun Yao sincerely and asked in a serious tone, "Eldest senior sister, I want to ask you for a favor. I wonder if it's possible?" "Yes, go ahead." Yun Yao nodded without hesitation. She didn't hesitate at all. Ji Tianxing said seriously, "Eldest senior sister, I know that you're very talented in formations, so I want to ask you to help me crack the last 2 formations." "I'll help you crack the formations?" Yun Yao was stunned and could not believe it. "Junior brother Tianxing, it's not that I don't want to help, but I don't know how to crack the formations. If I rashly crack the formations, it will bring disaster." Ji Tianxing gave her an encouraging look and said with a smile, "It's okay, I can teach you how to crack the formations. I'll protect you from the side, and you can crack the formations." This. Yun Yao hesitated and thought about it. "Junior brother Tianxing, did you just say that there are still 2 more formations to be broken? But there's only 1 left." Ji Tianxing shook his head and explained, "There are indeed 2 formations left. One is the 8 Extreme Dragonlock formation, and the other is the 9 Cauldrons Universe formation." 9 Cauldrons of the Universe? Yun Yao frowned, her eyes filled with shock and doubt. She wasn't the only one. Even Chu Huaishan had never heard of the 9 Cauldrons world's method of setting up formations. He was immediately filled with shock and disbelief. Yun Yao stared at Ji Tianxing and pondered silently. She knew in her heart that the method to break this formation was an incomparably precious secret technique. It could be said to be a priceless treasure. Generally speaking, anyone who grasped such a shocking secret technique would never reveal half a word of it to outsiders. Ji Tianxing actually wanted to pass on this kind of secret technique to her. Of course, he had incomparable trust in her and regarded her as someone he could entrust to him. This warmed Yun Yao's heart and made her feel a heavy responsibility on her shoulders. She couldn't bear to see Ji Tianxing disappointed, so she quickly nodded and agreed to this matter. "All right, Tianxing, I'm willing to help you." After receiving her affirmative answer, Ji Tianxing felt relieved and a smile appeared on his pale face. "Eldest senior sister, thank you." After that, Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged on a huge black rock and stared at the Tianyuan formation. He used his spiritual sense to transmit his voice to Yun Yao, and taught her the method to break the 8 Extreme Dragon Lock formation. Yun Yao was indeed the #1 genius in the Tianjin region. Her talent in formations was also outstanding. She understood the method to break the formation that Ji Tianxing taught her as soon as she heard it. Moreover, she was able to draw inferences and understand the profound meaning and mystery of the method to break the formation. In just a short hour, she had firmly memorized the method to break the 8 Extreme Dragon Lock formation in her heart. Then, she stretched out her palms and drew mysterious lines and gestures. She constantly sent out rays of true essence light into the Tianyuan formation. Her face was solemn as she stared at the Tianyuan formation attentively. Her body exuded a confident and powerful aura. When she injected her true essence into the formation and used the method to break it, the light shield within a kilometer radius soared with white light and turned into a white fog that covered the sky. In the white fog that covered a radius of 10 miles, a few golden dragon-shaped phantoms appeared and flew around the formation at an extremely fast speed. There were a total of 8 golden dragons. Each of them was lifelike and hundreds of meters long. Their bodies were as huge as mountains and exuded a sacred and mighty domineering aura. The 8 dragons flew back and forth. They didn't seem to be connected to each other and didn't crowd together. However, there was an invisible connection between them that formed an invisible protective layer that protected the entire formation. As the 8 divine dragons danced in the air, the formation began to circulate rapidly as well, creating a terrifying hurricane that spread out in all directions. The sand and stones on the ground were blown into the air and dust filled the sky. Yun Yao stood in the wind and used the method to break the formation with a solemn expression. Her eyes were also firm and extremely solemn. Ji Tianqing sat beside her and observed the reaction of the formation with his sharp eyes. He saw all the changes in the formation. Every few breaths, he would transmit his voice to Yun Yao and recite the incantation. He taught her the method to break the formation very carefully, and made sure that she didn't make any mistakes or deviations. As time passed, the 8 dragons flew faster and faster. The hurricane around the formation also became more and more violent. After a full 16 hours, the 8 divine dragon phantoms gradually dissipated, and the raging hurricane finally dissipated. At this time, the 8 extreme dragon lock formation was finally broken by Yun Yao. It was temporarily closed for 5 days. Yun Yao stopped and heaved a sigh of relief. She turned her head and looked at Ji Tianqing. Both of them showed a tacit smile as if they had a tacit understanding. She rested for 4 hours. After her true essence recovered, she started to break the last 9 cauldrons universe under Ji Tianqing's guidance. This formation was the most profound, exquisite, and unpredictable. It was also the most difficult to break. Yun Yao listened attentively to Ji Tianqing's voice transmission. She was fully focused on breaking the formation. She really went all out and used all of her strength and spirit. After 2 hours, the 9 cauldrons universe formation was activated. In the sky within a radius of 1,000 meters, 9 giant cauldrons appeared. Every giant cauldron was like a mountain. They emitted a majestic and heavy aura that could suppress heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing looked at the formation with a solemn expression and kept reciting the incantation. Yun Yao's reaction was extremely fast. Her strength was also more powerful. She actually started to break the formation successfully. Moreover, her tacit understanding with Ji Tianqing became deeper and deeper. Gradually, they formed a kind of telepathic connection. After a whole day, Yun Yao also exhausted her true essence. Her spirit was weak. At this time, the 9 giant cauldron phantoms finally disappeared. The 9 cauldrons universe formation was broken. It was temporarily closed for 4 days. Although Yun Yao's face was as pale as paper and her spirit was weak, she was very excited and excited. We did it! We really broke the Tianyuan formation. Chapter 362. Ji Tianqing had been waiting for this day for too long. A few months ago, before he entered the Sky Pillar sect, the Burial of Heaven told him that he had to obtain the Heavenly Star Pearl if he wanted to break through the shackles of his innate talent. For this reason, he went through hardships and dangers and investigated from many places. He finally found the result and concluded that the Heavenly Star Pearl was in this ancient tomb. In the end, he was not strong enough and could only decipher 3 formations. Fortunately, he had Yun Yao's help. Under her teachings and guidance, he was able to decipher the last 2 formations. The process was really full of ups and downs and dangerous twists and turns. Ji Tianqing looked at the Heaven Origin Grand Formation that was dimly lit and wide open. He could not help but sigh emotionally. Although Yun Yao was just like him, exhausted and physically weak, she knew that she had to understand. But she understood the urgency of the matter, and now was not the time to relax. Tianqing, the ancient tomb's guardian formation is finally open. Let's go in quickly. Ji Tianqing nodded and hurriedly stood up and walked side by side with her towards the ancient tomb. The 2 of them arrived at the edge of the ancient tomb and stepped onto the cold black stone path. Swoosh! In the empty air, 2 mysterious white lights flashed and disappeared immediately. The 2 of them did not feel anything unusual. They walked carefully on the ancient black stone path and walked towards the huge stone tablet at the end of the path. At this moment, Chu Huaishan rushed over and said with a worried face, "Tianqing, Yun Yao, wait a moment. You've exhausted too much energy earlier and are very weak. If there's any danger in the ancient tomb, I'm afraid something will happen. I'll go in with you and protect you if anything happens." Chu Huaishan stepped onto the black stone path as he spoke and was about to follow Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. However, at this moment, a mysterious white light flashed in the dark sky with a swoosh. With a muffled bang, Chu Huaishan was sent flying by the mysterious white light. Even though he was at the 7th level of the origin core stage or above, he was still sent flying by the mysterious white light and spat out a mouthful of blood before crashing into the plaza 100 meters away. Everyone was stunned when they saw this, and they all revealed worried and puzzled expressions. What's going on? Why was Elder Chu sent flying? Hasn't the Grand Tianyuan formation been broken? Why is it able to send people flying? Just now, Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing were fine when they went in, but Elder Chu was sent flying when he went in. There's something strange about this formation. The deacons discussed among themselves in bewilderment. They hurried over to Chu Huaishan and helped him up from the ground to check on his injuries. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao also stopped and turned to look at Chu Huaishan. Their eyes were filled with worry and concern. Seeing that Chu Huaishan was only slightly injured, the two of them heaved a sigh of relief. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. He immediately guessed the reason. He explained to Chu Huaishan and the other deacons, "Elder Chu, deacons, I know what's going on. The design of this Grand Tianyuan formation is very mysterious. We can't completely break it. We can only temporarily close it for a few days, but the power of the formation is still there. Yun Yao and I broke the formation by ourselves, so we can enter without any problems. Those who didn't participate in breaking the formation can't enter the formation." Hearing his explanation, everyone's expression changed. They started to whisper to each other. No way! This Grand Tianyuan formation is so powerful? It can still maintain its original power after being broken? The formation can recognize people? Only those who participated in breaking the formation can enter. Those who didn't participate will be sent flying. Isn't this too amazing? Today is an eye-opener for me. I've seen the wonders of the top Grand Tianyuan formation. I have no regrets in life. Although Elder Chu and the other deacons found it unbelievable, they all nodded to show that they understood. They wouldn't act rashly again. They were all guarding the entrance of the formation. Watching Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao enter the ancient tomb, they prayed silently for them. Please don't let anything happen to them. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stepped on the 5-meter-wide ancient stone path and walked toward the stone tablet at the end. This wide black stone path was paved with many 5-meter-long, 10-kilogram black boulders. It exuded a solemn aura. There were 18 steps at the end of the stone path. The two of them walked up the steps and came to a high platform with a radius of 100 meters. At the center of this high platform stood a black stone tablet that was 1,000 meters tall, towering between heaven and earth. Such a huge stone tablet was rarely seen in the world. Moreover, the edges of the stone tablet were very neat, as if it had been cut in half by a sharp sword. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao couldn't imagine what kind of skills the powerhouse who built the ancient tomb had to be able to set up such a huge stone tablet here. The stone tablet exuded a desolate and solemn aura. The mottled lines on its surface showed the traces of thousands of years of wind and frost. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao looked up at the stone tablet and saw a row of big words engraved on it. Every stroke of the words was 3 fingers deep into the stone. The strokes were as sharp as a sword, revealing a peerless sword intent that was as cold and arrogant as a sword. There was an ancient saying that the words reflected the person. From the words written by a person, one could see the person's nature, temperament, and breadth of mind. Ji Tianqing was able to sense from the words on the stone tablet that the person who inscribed these words was surely a peerless expert that looked down upon all living beings, and the person's disposition was cold, arrogant, and fierce. At this time, Yun Yao observed for a moment and recognized the 6 big words on the stone tablet. She couldn't help but murmur to herself, "The tomb of Master Kenshin." Her face suddenly changed. Her eyes were full of doubt and shock. The tomb of Kenshin? How could this ancient tomb at the foot of Dragon Mountain be the tomb of Kenshin? Ji Tianqing looked at her calmly and asked, "Eldest senior sister, you recognize the words on this tablet? You've even heard of Kenshin?" Yun Yao looked at him deeply. Seeing his calm expression, it was obvious that he already knew the secret of this ancient tomb. She vaguely guessed something and nodded. The name of Kenshin is known to all the ancient forces and powerhouses of the Tianxian continent. In the era 1,000 years ago, Kenshin was the most outstanding and dazzling of all the powerhouses in the world. Even the imperial court of Middle State 1,000 years ago had to be courteous to Kenshin. They even had to ask him for help. How could such a godlike powerhouse be buried here? Ji Tianqing listened silently. Seeing that she recognized the words from 1,000 years ago and knew the legends of Kenshin, he analyzed some things in his heart. eldest senior sister is the #1 genius of the Tianqian region, the head disciple of our sect, but no one has ever mentioned her family or background. It's like she appeared out of thin air. I've guessed before that eldest senior sister's background is not simple. Now it seems that I've guessed right. She actually knows the legends from 1,000 years ago. She even knows the relationship between Kenshin and the imperial court of Middle State. It's very likely that she was born in an ancient and mysterious family. Of course, these were only his guesses. He couldn't come to a conclusion yet. Chapter 363. Yun Yao stared at the small characters at the bottom left of the tombstone and studied them carefully. After a while, she recognized the ancient characters and murmured in a low voice, "Established by the unfilial disciple, Emperor Yi." From the looks of it, this ancient tombstone was erected by Emperor Yi for his master, Kenshin. The entire tomb was probably built by Emperor Yi as well. She frowned slightly and pondered for a moment. The doubt in her eyes deepened. Junior brother Tianqing, this tomb is a little strange. There's something wrong with it. Ji Tianqing stared at her and said calmly, "Please enlighten me, eldest senior sister." Yun Yao glanced at him with a strange expression and said in a playful tone, "Tianqing, you should know more about this tomb and Kenshin than I do, right?" Ji Tianqing's expression changed slightly, and a look of surprise flashed in his eyes. He quickly shook his head and denied, "Eldest senior sister, I really don't know anything about the past and legends from 1,000 years ago." "Humph. Tianqing, you're not being honest." Yun Yao rolled her beautiful eyes and glared at him with slight anger. Ji Tianqing was stunned when he saw her coquettish look and expression. His heart skipped a beat. He had never thought that the fairy who had always been cold, aloof, and otherworldly would actually act like an ordinary girl and show such an intimate and natural side in front of him. No matter how steady his temperament was, it was difficult for him to remain calm at this moment. After all, with his intelligence, how could he not understand what this meant? When he came back to his senses, Ji Tianqing nodded at her and revealed an embarrassed smile. He explained, "All right, eldest senior sister, your eyes are as sharp as torches. I really can't hide it from you. I admit that ever since I discovered the Dragon Mountain tomb, I've been studying the tomb's formation and investigating Kenshin's legends and deeds. I've been looking for Kenshin's relics. That thing is very important to me. The devil race has also been looking for that thing all this time. That's why I'm so anxious and don't dare to waste time." Hearing his words, Yun Yao's clear eyes revealed a touch of gentleness. She gazed into his eyes and said sincerely, "Tianqing, from the moment you taught me how to break the formation, I knew that you completely trusted me. Thank you. No matter what, I will help you find that thing. You are also one of the people I trust the most." At this moment, the two of them stared into each other's eyes. Their gentle and sincere gazes even contained a hint of hazy emotions. Although the two of them didn't point it out and didn't say a single word, the two of them had a tacit understanding. Everything was understood without words. At that moment, Chu Huaishan's worried voice came from the entrance of the formation. "Tianqing, Yun Yao, are you guys okay? If there is any danger, you must withdraw in time. Don't put yourself in danger." Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were immediately awakened. Yun Yao quickly turned her head away and pretended to continue observing the ancient tombstone. However, Ji Tianqing caught a glimpse of her cute and sparkling earlobes, which were covered with a layer of red. He wanted to laugh in his heart, but he held it in. He quickly waved his hand at Chu Huaishan outside the formation and replied, "Elder Chu, don't worry. We know what to do." At the entrance of the formation, several deacons exchanged glances and were whispering to each other. "Elder Chu, you're not being kind." "That's right." They were looking at each other affectionately and were about to embrace each other intimately. "If you shout like that, they might hate you." Tianqing and Yun Yao are a match made in heaven. They are the golden boy and jade girl of our sect. We old guys can see that in the entire Tianqian region, only Tianqing is worthy of Yun Yao. This is recognized by everyone. "Elder Chu, don't make trouble." Several deacons were criticizing and mocking Chu Huaishan. His old face was a little embarrassed, and his dark face was flushed red. He turned his head and glared at the deacons. He said angrily, "Do you think I don't know what you're talking about? But what is this place? It's a 1,000-year-old ancient tomb. Tianqing and Yun Yao are standing on someone's tombstone and flirting with each other. Is this appropriate? Besides, the ancient tomb is so dangerous. If they get distracted and something happens to them, how are we going to explain it to the sect leader? The deacons didn't say anything. They either looked down at the ground as if they were counting ants, or looked up at the sky as if they were looking at the stars. Chu Huaishan glared at them again. Then, he turned his head and looked into the ancient tomb. He continued to stare at Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao, afraid that something would happen to them. At this time, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao walked around the ancient tombstone, but they didn't find any clues. The two of them walked down the high platform and continued to walk into the depths of the ancient tomb. Behind the ancient tombstone was an arched mausoleum. This mausoleum covered an area of a few hundred square meters. It was as huge as a palace. It was upside down on the ground in a semicircle and was made of huge black stones. The two of them walked along the wide stone path towards the mausoleum and whispered to each other. Eldest senior sister, you said that there is something wrong with this Kenshin tomb. Do you have any evidence? Ji Tianxing had asked the burial of heaven before. Of course, he knew that this ancient tomb was not a real Kenshin tomb. However, when he saw that Yun Yao also said that there was something wrong with this ancient tomb, he was curious and wanted to ask her about it. Yun Yao explained calmly. Kenshin was a powerhouse who was above all mortals. He disappeared 1,000 years ago. Legend has it that he left the Tianxian continent and went to a wider world to pursue the peak of martial arts. There are also legends that say that he met with a calamity and died 1,000 years ago. However, no matter what happened to Kenshin, it is impossible for his tomb to appear here. The ancient Star Realm and the Tianqian region are just a small place compared to the vast Tianxian continent. Ji Tianxing listened carefully and nodded. That's right. Eldest senior sister. What you said makes a lot of sense. By the way, have you heard of Ren Huangyi who built this ancient tomb? Ren Huangyi. Yun Yao frowned slightly and shook her head. I've never heard of him. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and did not pursue the matter. Let's not talk about those legendary figures from 1,000 years ago. Let's first figure out how to enter this mausoleum. He and Yun Yao walked to the ancient tomb and stared at the black mausoleum that was like a palace, carefully examining it. This mausoleum was like a huge black bowl that was upside down. There was no door or passageway. Every black boulder was tightly sealed. There was not a single gap between them. At first glance, the entire mausoleum was a complete piece. Other than the boulder that was broken through, there was no entrance at all. Ji Tianxing frowned and said with a serious expression, when Ren Huangyi built this Kenshin mausoleum, he did not leave an entrance or passageway. It seems that we have to think of another way. Yun Yao nodded and took out 2 talismans from her spatial ring. Chapter 364. Heaven origin stage experts who controlled the power of the 5 elements had the ability to fly and burrow into the ground. They could condense wings with true essence and fly in the sky. They could use earth element true essence to burrow into the depths of the ground as if they were walking on flat ground. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao did not have the strength of heaven origin stage, so they could not fly or burrow into the ground. However, the two of them could use earth escape talismans of high grade profound grade to have the ability to burrow into the ground for a short period of time. When the two of them poured their true essence into the earth escape talisman, the talisman immediately ignited with earthy yellow flames and turned into black ash. Swoosh! A dark yellow true essence light immediately enveloped Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao, condensing into a 3-meter-long sharp shuttle and enveloping the two of them. Tianxing, follow me. Yun Yao used her spiritual sense to warn Ji Tianxing. Then, she took the lead in controlling the dark yellow sharp shuttle and burrowed into the ground. Ji Tianxing also quickly controlled the sharp shuttle and followed her into the depths of the ground. The dark yellow sharp shuttle was condensed from the power of the Earth Escape talisman. It was called the Earth Escape Shuttle. The Earth Escape Shuttle contained boundless Earth element energy. Any rock or soil that came into contact with the Earth Escape Shuttle would automatically disperse and expand outwards. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao controlled the Earth Escape Shuttle and moved forward underground like fish swimming in water. They did not find it difficult or exhausting. After 100 breaths of time, the two of them had burrowed 100 meters underground. At this time, Yun Yao used her spiritual sense to investigate the situation 50 meters around them. Then, she led Ji Tianxing towards the north. The two of them controlled the Earth Escape Shuttle and slowly passed through the walls of the mausoleum made of huge black rocks. Finally, they entered the interior of the mausoleum. Bang! The two Earth escape shuttles dissipated at the same time. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's figures appeared and landed in a pitch-black passage without any light. Ji Tianqing's spiritual sense could only cover a radius of 10 meters. Yun Yao's strength was higher, so her spiritual sense was also more powerful. She could investigate a radius of 50 meters. The two of them quickly saw that the pitch-black tunnel under their feet was one of the tunnels in the mausoleum. The passage was more than 3 meters high and 2 meters wide. The ground and walls were made of black boulders, and the air was stuffy and dry. Tianqing, the air in the tomb hasn't circulated for thousands of years. It's very harmful to the body. Be careful. Yun Yao held her breath and told Ji Tianqing through her holy sense. Ji Tianqing responded and followed behind her, following the passage into the depths of the darkness. The passageway was 100 meters long. The two of them walked more than 100 steps before reaching the end of the passageway. Fortunately, there were no traps or hidden weapons in the passage, so the two of them did not encounter any danger. Ji Tianqing thought to himself, this mausoleum is protected by the Grand Formation of Tianyuan, so it's extremely safe. There's no need to set up any traps or hidden weapons in the mausoleum. After all, how can a person who can break the Grand Formation of Tianyuan be stopped by some hidden weapons? Yun Yao walked in front and used her holy sense to cover an area of 50 meters around them. She was focused on investigating the situation. There were 2 forks at the end of the passageway. She stood at the forks and pondered for a moment. Then, she led Ji Tianqing into the right passageway. The two of them continued to move forward along the black passageway. Not long after, they encountered another crossroad and several forks in the road. The inside of the mausoleum was filled with crisscrossing passageways. It was as complicated and difficult to distinguish as a maze. Although there were no traps or hidden weapons in the passageways, the mausoleum formed by the passageways was like a maze. It made people dizzy and unable to distinguish north from south. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao shuttled through the passageways. Every time they walked a certain distance, they would stop and analyze for a while. These passageways contained the effects of an illusory formation. They formed an extremely complicated mausoleum. Relying on his unfathomable attainments in array Dao, Ji Tianqing analyzed it a few times and gradually found a way to crack it. About 2 hours later, he successfully found the only correct passageway among the hundreds of passageways. He led Yun Yao into a dark and empty hall. This was a hall with a radius of 100 meters. It was pitch black without any light. The air was stuffy and dead silent. The floor of the hall was square and paved with black slabs. 4 statues of strange beasts stood in the 4 corners of the hall. Each statue of a strange beast was 10 meters tall. The carvings were lifelike and ferocious, revealing a majestic aura. The green tomb guardian divine beast in the eastern corner looked like a spirit deer with antlers. However, its face and mouth were like that of a fierce tiger. The tomb guardian divine beast in the western corner was dark gold. It had the body of a lion but the head of a human. The tomb guardian beasts at the north and south corners of the walls were a 3-headed flood dragon, and the other was a giant, bat-like bird with wings. Ji Tianqing could see that these 4 strange beast statues were related to ancient myths. They were the legendary tomb guardian divine beasts. They could protect the safety of the mausoleum, adjust the luck of the wind and water, and protect the tomb owner in the next life. The dome of the hall was round, like a huge black disc. Ji Tianqing saw that the layout of the hall was round on top and round on the bottom. He immediately concluded that this should be the main tomb chamber. After all, this kind of layout was in line with the ancient people's understanding of heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing withdrew his gaze from the dome and lowered his head to look at the middle of the hall. His spiritual sense was less than 10 meters away. He took out an egg-sized moonstone from his interspatial ring to illuminate the darkness ahead. With the weak light of the moonstone, he immediately saw a huge stone statue standing in the middle of the hall. Although the light was dim, he could only vaguely see the outline of the statue. However, he still caught a glimpse of it. It was a human statue. It was very majestic and solemn. Eldest senior sister, let's go and take a look. Be careful. Ji Tianqing held the moonstone in his hand and walked toward the huge statue with Yun Yao. The two of them held their breaths and walked silently to the bottom of the statue. They looked at it closely. They saw that this huge stone statue, which was 10 meters tall, was carved with a tall, handsome and dignified young man. The statue was carved meticulously and lifelike. The man's facial features and expression could be clearly seen. The young man was wearing a white robe and a golden battle robe that dragged on the ground. His face was handsome and tall. He had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. His aura was extraordinary. He stood proudly above the clouds and looked down at all living beings with cold eyes. His body exuded a fierce and domineering aura. The index and middle fingers of his hands were closed together and he made a mysterious sword gesture. His left hand pointed to the sky and his right hand pointed to the ground. He was like a god descending from the ninth heaven. Although he didn't carry a sword, he made a sword gesture with both hands and emitted a terrifying sword intent that covered the sky and tore the sky. It was as if everything in the world was under his control and turned into his divine weapon for him to use. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao looked up at the statue and deeply felt the terrifying sword intent. They felt a chill all over their bodies and a strong fear and awe appeared in their hearts. Chapter 365. The huge statue had stood in the dark hall for thousands of years. Although the surface of the statue was covered in a thick layer of dust and looked very dark, it still could not hide the white-robed man's soaring sword intent and domineering aura. Ji Tianqing looked up at the statue and observed it for a moment. Then he said to Yun Yao telepathically, "Eldest senior sister, if I'm not wrong, this should be the Kenshin statue." Yun Yao nodded and said with some emotion, "It's just a statue, but it has such a peerless demeanor and domineering aura. This person should be the Kenshin without a doubt. I wonder what level of martial arts Kenshin reached in his prime? The path of martial arts is long and endless. What kind of world is above heaven's origin?" Her voice was full of longing and fascination. She was full of fantasies and longing for the pinnacle of martial arts. After all, she was not only a cold fairy, but also a proud woman who was determined to pursue the pinnacle of martial arts. Ji Tianqing had the same thought. He had many wild thoughts about the level above heaven's origin. The two of them were silent for a moment. Then, Yun Yao said in a serious tone, "Tianqing, we have rashly broken into the Kenshin mausoleum. This is a little rude. We have offended the senior Kenshin." Ji Tianqing nodded and said calmly, "Kenshin is the sage of our race and the owner of the mausoleum. Let's pay our respects." Thus, the two of them bowed to the statue of the sword god and bowed to show their respect. Just as the two of them bowed, the originally simple and unadorned statue of the sword god suddenly began to shake. As the sword god statue shook more and more violently, the dust that covered the statue all fell down, causing smoke and dust to swirl in the hall. The rock on the surface of the statue cracked and countless pieces of rock fell down. Kacha! Kacha! With a crisp shattering sound, the entire Kenshin statue quickly crumbled into a pile of rubble. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were both shocked. They immediately retreated 20 meters away and looked at the collapsing statue in confusion. The shaking and collapse of the Kenshin statue caused a huge commotion, shaking the entire hall. For a moment, muffled rumbling sounds echoed in the spacious hall, as if the entire hall was about to collapse. How could this be? We didn't touch the Kenshin statue, nor did we trigger any traps. How did the Kenshin statue suddenly collapse? Tianqing, look at the shoulder of the statue. Yun Yao suddenly noticed a dazzling golden light shining from the shoulder of the crumbling Kenshin statue. Ji Tianqing looked up and saw an even more dazzling golden light after the stone carving on the shoulder of the statue shattered. The originally pitch-black hall was immediately illuminated by the dazzling golden light, reflecting the smoke and dust that filled the air, fluttering in the air like goose feather snowflakes. Ji Tianqing was surprised. He stared at the increasingly dazzling golden light and gradually saw the appearance of the golden light. Eldest senior sister, that golden light seems to be a cloak. Yun Yao also stared at the golden light for a moment. Suddenly, a bright light flashed in her eyes. Could that be the battle robe worn by the Kenshin? As the rocks on the statue continued to collapse and fall, the golden light became more and more dazzling. After 100 breaths, the entire statue collapsed and turned into rubble and dust. At this moment, the dazzling golden light finally began to fade and gradually dimmed. Swoosh! A 2-meter-long dark golden battle robe appeared above the rubble and floated in the air. The appearance of the battle robe was very delicate. Not only was there a pattern of 2 divine dragons soaring in the clouds, but there was also a pattern of a circle of silver stars. A pair of dark golden horns protruded from the shoulders of the battle robe. The knot of the battle robe was also a silver chain of stars. Although the battle robe had been sealed in the statue for thousands of years, it still looked as good as new and as complete as before. The battle robe floated in the air, flashing with a hazy golden light and emitting a majestic and domineering aura. It was like a command flag that commanded the world. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stared at the battle robe and discussed secretly through voice transmission. I didn't expect that the Kenshin statue actually hit a battle robe. It seems that the battle robe was about to break out of the seal and cause the Kenshin statue to collapse. Could this golden battle robe be a relic of the Kenshin? What grade of treasure is this? It's so strange. We didn't do anything. Why did this battle robe appear by itself? Just as the two of them were discussing with confusion, the golden battle robe turned into a golden stream of light and flew over with a swoosh. The golden stream of light was like a lightsaber, heading straight for Ji Tianqing. It was as fast as lightning. Before the stream of light arrived in front of him, he could already feel the extremely sharp sword intent and energy. He instinctively retreated to avoid it. Yun Yao's expression also changed. She hurriedly pulled him to the corner of the wall. Tianqing, get out of the way. However, the golden stream of light was too fast. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao couldn't avoid it at all with their strength. Just as Ji Tianqing turned and ran, the golden stream of light enveloped his body with an unstoppable force. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing was enveloped by the golden stream of light. His body immediately stiffened and froze on the spot. He couldn't move at all. Yun Yao was full of worry and anxiety, but there was nothing she could do. Just as she reached out to pull Ji Tianqing, she was knocked back a few steps by the golden stream of light. Her body was numb and stiff, and she couldn't use any of her strength. Fortunately, the golden stream of light that enveloped Ji Tianqing quickly dissipated. With a swoosh, the golden stream of light instantly disappeared into his body. Then, he appeared on the spot, unscathed. There was no injury on his body at all. He came to his senses and hurriedly checked his body's condition. He found that he wasn't injured at all. Even the circulation of his true essence was unimpeded. It was as if nothing had happened just now. What's going on? It's too strange. Ji Tianqing frowned and muttered. He hurriedly looked at Yun Yao. Senior sister, are you okay? Are you hurt? Yun Yao stared at him. Her eyes were surging with splendor. She was stunned for a moment before she came to her senses. Junior brother Tianqing. You. Kenshin's battle robe actually recognized you as its master. Yun Yao's eyes were full of excitement. Her pretty face revealed a strong expression of disbelief. Seeing her reaction, Ji Tianqing's expression also changed. He hurriedly turned his head to look at his shoulders. Sure enough, the Kenshin battle robe was on him. It fit his body perfectly. He was wearing the Kenshin battle robe. There was a dark golden horn on each of his shoulders. A silver star chain was tied into a dead knot around his neck. As he turned around and twisted his body, the wide dark golden battle robe swayed gently. It flickered with a faint golden light and released a majestic aura. Chapter 366. Ji Tianqing was wearing the Kenshin battle robe and couldn't see his own appearance. Although he was shocked, he didn't feel much. But Yun Yao saw it clearly. Her beautiful eyes stared at him, and her heart surged. In her eyes, Ji Tianqing's current appearance was at least 70% similar to Kenshin. The only difference between him and Kenshin was that he didn't have Kenshin's arrogance and domineering aura. But Yun Yao believed that this was only temporary. Many years later, when Ji Tianqing also grew into a peak powerhouse, he would also have the demeanor and bearing of a powerhouse. Ji Tianqing walked a few steps and shook the Kenshin battle robe on his body. He didn't feel any discomfort. With his experience and knowledge, he couldn't recognize the material and manufacturing method of the battle robe, nor could he tell what grade of treasure it was. This battle robe was extremely heavy and powerful, but it was as light as a feather when he wore it. Seeing that Yun Yao was still staring at him as if she was looking at a perfect work of art, he walked to Yun Yao and asked gently, "Eldest senior sister, what are you looking at?" Yun Yao stretched out her slender hands and straightened his collar. A gentle smile appeared in her eyes as she joked, "Tianqing, you look like Kenshin when you wear this battle robe." No wonder the battle robe appeared and recognized you as its master. I'm afraid you have a deep relationship with Kenshin. Ji Tianqing touched his chin and smiled embarrassedly. Eldest senior sister, don't joke with me. How can I be compared to Kenshin? I'm probably lucky enough to be recognized by this battle robe. After all, this battle robe is for men. Between the two of us, I'm the only one suitable for it. Yun Yao nodded and continued. The battle robe has already recognized you as its master. No matter what kind of peerless treasure it is, you can control it now. It's just that you can't use its full power. This battle robe was left behind by Kenshin. It must have extraordinary effects. You can try it out. The battle robe fused into Ji Tianqing's body and fused with his soul. With a thought, he put away the battle robe. With another thought, the battle robe appeared on his body out of thin air. He then activated his true essence and poured it into his battle robe. The battle robe immediately lit up with a dazzling golden light, fluttering in the wind. Crash! As his battle robe fluttered, his feet gradually left the ground, and he actually flew into the air. When he tried to increase the power of his true essence and control the rhythm of his battle robe, he was actually able to fly forward in midair. Seeing this scene, Yun Yao was not surprised at all. She murmured in a gratified tone, "It's really amazing. This should be one of the effects of the Kenshin battle robe." Ji Tianqing circled twice in midair before he suppressed his excitement and landed beside Yun Yao. Great! The Kenshin battle robe can also carry me in flight. It will be much more convenient for me to travel in the future. This reminded him of Yun Yao's hairpin. It could turn into a pair of wind and fire wings to carry people in flight. Its effect was very mysterious. Yun Yao reminded him a few more times and asked him to try other effects of the battle robe. Ji Tianqing poured his true essence into the battle robe again. With a light flick, the battle robe slashed out a few golden light blades. Bang! 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 With a muffled sound, a few huge gullies were created on the rocky ground, and soil and stones splattered everywhere. He was both excited and satisfied that such a casual attack had such powerful power. He studied it for a while, but he was not strong enough to discover more effects. He could only give up. By the way, senior sister, I saw a pool behind the statue just now. Yun Yao immediately raised her eyebrows and asked doubtfully, "Pool?" When we came in just now, I used my spiritual sense to investigate. There was no pool. Let's go and take a look, Ji Tianqing said as he led Yun Yao into the depths of the main hall. The two of them had only walked 100 steps when they saw a square black pool on the flat ground. The pool was filled with light green water. It was motionless and had no signs of life. In the middle of the pool, there was a huge grayish-white lotus leaf floating. There was a bowl-sized lotus bud on the lotus leaf. The lotus bud was tightly curled up. It was also grayish-white and faintly exuded a mysterious aura. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stood by the pool and looked at it keenly. Yun Yao frowned and asked doubtfully, "That's strange. I didn't find a pool here before. Did it appear after the Kenshin statue collapsed?" Ji Tianqing looked at the four sides of the pool. There were traces of stone slabs moving and rubbing against each other. He nodded and said, "The pool must have opened after the statue collapsed and triggered some mechanism. Senior sister, look at the lotus leaf and the flower bud in the pool. Don't you think it's a little strange?" Yun Yao stared at the lotus leaf and the flower bud for a moment and nodded. It's indeed strange. The lotus leaf and the flower bud seem to be carved out of stone. There are no roots below them, but they can float on the water. I'm afraid there's something strange about the clear water in this pool. Ji Tianqing walked to the side of the pool and released his spiritual sense to explore the pool. However, he found that the pool water could block the spiritual sense and he could not see the situation in the pool at all. He was about to observe the lotus leaf in the pool closely when a golden light suddenly appeared in the pool. The golden light appeared in the depths of the pool and disappeared in a flash. The golden light was refracted by the pool water, but hundreds of golden lights appeared. It was very dazzling. Suddenly, a muffled rumbling sound came from the bottom of the pool. The whole pool trembled slightly. With their previous experience, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao immediately guessed something and retreated away from the pool. Sure enough, a whirlpool suddenly appeared in the pool that was originally motionless. The light blue pool water was swallowed and swept away by the whirlpool. The water level was dropping rapidly. In just 10 breaths, more than half of the pool water was swallowed, and the bottom was about to be seen. The strange thing was that the grayish-white lotus leaf and the flower bud were still floating in the air and did not move at all. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stared at the lotus leaf and the flower bud. They felt more and more strange. Soon, 100 breaths passed. The pool water was completely swallowed up. The pool became a dark and deep pit. No more sounds came out. The lotus leaves and buds floating in midair, however, began to tremble slightly and let out cracking noises. The huge lotus leaf with a radius of 2 meters was broken. It collapsed into countless broken stones and fell into the deep pit. The flower bud also cracked, and countless grayish-white broken stones were scattered. When all the broken stones on the surface of the flower bud were scattered, a fist-sized golden flower bud appeared in front of the two of them. It lit up with dazzling golden light. As the golden light became more and more dazzling, the golden flower bud also bloomed. More than 10 golden petals stretched out gracefully. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were full of expectation. They stared at the golden lotus flower in full bloom. When the golden lotus flower was completely in bloom, the two of them saw a thumb-sized silver bead lying in the stamen. Chapter 367. When the mysterious silver pearl appeared, Ji Tianqing stared at it, unable to move his eyes away. He didn't know why, but his heart actually skipped a few beats. The blood in his body flowed faster, and a strong desire surged from the depths of his soul. There seemed to be a voice in the depths of his heart urging him to approach the mysterious silver pearl. Buzz! Buzz! The blooming golden lotus gently flapped its petals and slowly floated in front of Ji Tianqing. The mysterious silver pearl in the stamen released brilliant starlight and faintly emitted an invisible majestic aura. He looked at the silver pearl up close and found that it was crystal clear. He could vaguely see a golden drop of water inside the pearl. Although the golden drop of liquid was in the shape of a water droplet, it was as solid and stable as a crystal. Ji Tianqing could clearly feel that the golden drop of water was emitting a majestic aura that called his soul. He was instantly enlightened, and 6 words appeared in his mind. Heavenly Astral Pearl. Kenshin's blood. At that moment, the blood in his body flowed. His eyes were filled with excitement, and his body trembled slightly. Heavenly Astral Pearl. It must be the Heavenly Astral Pearl. I've waited for too long. I've finally found you. Ji Tianqing murmured in a low, hoarse voice. His entire body and mind were focused on the mysterious silver pearl, and he completely forgot about everything else. Yun Yao also came back to her senses. She could feel the destructive aura inside the mysterious silver pearl and couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression. She saw Ji Tianqing's abnormal expression and his body trembling with excitement and immediately guessed the reason. It seems that this mysterious pearl is the Kenshin's relic that Tianqing is looking for. It's something very important to him. Kenshin's battle robe took the initiative to recognize him as its master, and the Kenshin's relic also took the initiative to appear. Tianqing, oh Tianqing, what's your relationship with Kenshin? I'm getting closer to you, but why are you becoming more and more mysterious? Why can't I see through you? Yun Yao stared at Ji Tianqing with deep eyes. She stood quietly to the side, not making any sound so as not to disturb him. At this moment, Ji Tianqing slowly stretched out his hands and lifted the heavenly astral pearl from the stamen of the golden lotus. With soft hissing sounds, the perfectly blooming golden lotus instantly collapsed into millions of golden spots of light, scattering and disappearing. The heavenly star bead in Ji Tianqing's palm also seemed to have come alive. It followed the rhythm of his breathing and bloomed with bright starlight. His mind and consciousness were immersed in the heavenly star bead, entering an extremely mysterious state. He seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. His face was serene as he closed his eyes and sat cross-legged on the ground. The heavenly star bead also slowly flew towards his forehead and entered through his glabella. In the next moment, the silver bead shattered and turned into millions of silver light spots. They spread out in his body and flowed to his limbs and bones along with his blood. Swoosh! The vast power of the stars immediately spread throughout his body and merged into every drop of blood, every inch of his meridians, skin, flesh and bones. His body was also covered in a layer of silver starlight. His figure became hazy and illusory. The silver pearl shattered, and the drop of golden Kenshin blood also lost its restraints and flowed into his heart. Every time his heart beat, the Kenshin blood would release a faint trace of golden bloodline power and merge into his blood. Ji Tianqing's body suddenly glowed with a dazzling golden color. His entire body emitted a holy and domineering aura. The endless power of the stars was rapidly strengthening his physical body. His muscles and bones were twisting and wriggling slowly. They were being refined by the power of the stars until they glowed with silver light. Every time his skin, muscles and bones wriggled, his physique would transform and strengthen at an incredible speed. At the same time, the Kenshin blood in his heart also gradually released its golden bloodline power and gradually refined his bloodline. All of this was due to the changes in Ji Tianqing's body. He sat on the ground without moving and maintained his cultivation posture. He was as steady as a rock. Even if his body was twisting and all his bones and muscles were being reconstructed, he could not feel any pain or torture. That was because his soul and body had been separated by the heavenly astral pearl and the Kenshin blood. His soul had fallen into a deep sleep and was experiencing a dream that seemed both real and illusory. Yun Yao stood beside him and looked at him with a focused and concerned expression. In the first 4 hours, she was still full of worry, afraid that something would happen to Ji Tianxing. After all, the golden and silver light and changes brought by the mysterious pearl flying into Ji Tianxing's body were too shocking. But after 4 hours, she saw that Ji Tianxing's expression was peaceful and his breathing was very stable. There were no abnormalities. She was finally relieved and sat down 5 steps away from him, silently guarding him. Yun Yao could see that his body was undergoing tremendous changes. His physique and strength were also rapidly increasing. She thought to herself, Tianxing has merged with Kenshin's relic. He will definitely receive great benefits. His martial talent and potential will very likely surpass mine in the future. I hope that his strength will increase by leaps and bounds after this cultivation. She had guessed that Ji Tianxing would very likely reach the heavens in a single step after merging with Kenshin's relic and possess heaven-defying talent. But she did not feel jealous at all. Instead, she felt gratified and happy for him from the bottom of her heart. Deep in her heart, she also wanted to see him grow quickly and become a martial arts expert as soon as possible. Time passed silently in the spacious and dark hall. Unknowingly, a day had passed. Ji Tianxing had already refined 1/10 of the power of the stars in his body. He had also absorbed about 1/10 of the Kenshin blood. His sword embryo, 9 sword veins, and 72 apertures had also silently changed their positions under the transformation of the Kenshin blood, forming the sword palace in his body. The Kenshin blood had helped him complete the cultivation of the 5th level of the sword heart path, allowing him to naturally break through the mystic comprehending realm and reach the primal core realm. From this moment on, he had broken through the shackles of talent and stepped into a whole new realm of martial arts. For other primal core realm experts, the vital essence stored in their dantian would condense into a solid elixir. Ji Tianxing's sword embryo had long been solid. After reaching the primal core realm, it did not change much. Next, after reaching the primal core realm, he would cultivate the 6th level of the sword heart path and open up 18 sword veins in his body. A normal human ancient martial art practitioner only had 9 meridians. It was impossible for them to open up 9 new meridians. However, the power of the stars in Ji Tianxing's body had been constantly helping him to transform the structure of his body and reorganize his meridians and apertures. As time passed, new meridians appeared in his body. The 10th, 11th, 12th. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.